Chapter 4320. In the extreme north of the universe, here is the taboo of the entire universe. For example, the blood river where the descendants of the dark devil come from is in this extremely northern region. It is desolate all year round, and no one sets foot in it. The blood in the river is enough to wipe out everything below the Supreme. Even if the Supreme is in person, doesn't dare to rush step into the blood. It is rumored that there are thousands of blood monster ancestors from the chaos prehistoric age sleeping in this blood river. But the rumors are false, and no one can say clearly. There are 9 taboo places like the blood river. There are 9 places in the extreme north of the universe. One of them is the huge star field in front of the main owner of the Diwu temple. This huge star field is covered by the nebula thunder all year round, cannot see any light, and is quietly suspended in the starry sky, like a gray cotton swab ball, revealing the thick breath of death. But the master of Diwu Shrine knows that this place, named one of the 9 taboos, named Death Star Field, is one of the strongest races in the universe, the entrance to the dragon race. Rarely, the dragons were born. So few people know where the dragons' habitats are. And the owner of the Diwu temple happens to be one of the people who knows where the dragons are. The dragon clan has already formed its own realm, and the only entrance to the dragon clan is this Dead Star Field. In this Dead Star Field, there is a congenital death that is deadly to the Supreme. If there is no dragon token, or if the dragon person invites himself, otherwise even the Supreme enters, it will be lost under the erosion of the chaotic innate death. To die. This black feather. Come to meet the dragons and talk about important things. The master of the Diwu Shrine stepped in the void and stared tightly at this dead starfield. Shunsheng said, even if it is him, in the face of this dragon race that has been the peak race since ancient times, he does not dare to have the slightest intention. After a while, rumble. The dead star field, like a gray lead cloud, made a loud muffle. The next moment, I saw a faint yellow light, which was sprayed out of this dead star field, and drove away the endless thunder nebula and the innate death of chaos, forming a passageway that was sufficient for people to pass through. Kuroa, my lord, please. A low sound of indifference, unlike human beings, came from this dead star field. Thank you, Dragon King. The master of Diwu Shrine smiled slightly, and immediately stepped on it, and suddenly appeared on the channel made by Huang Guang, stepping into the dead star domain step by step. Rumble. After a while, the master of the Diwu temple disappeared, and the faint yellow light disappeared, and the gray nebula and thunder continued to diffuse again, covering it. Inside the Temple of Life, with the order of Supreme, after the return of all the disciples in Shinkong Ancient Road, the atmosphere of the whole life shrine gradually became dignified and severe. Everyone knows that for the Temple of Life, a great war is coming. At this moment, no one dared to relax. All of them hurry up time, quickly enlighten and practice. Jian Wushuang and Cold as Frost haven't been kept warm for a long time, and they have also declared a retreat. Although Lung Rushwang's heart was reluctant, he also knew that the overall situation was the most important. Only by constantly improving his strength could he keep up with the pace of the sword unparalleled. In an instant 10 years passed. Inside a cabin, the sword sat cross-legged, closed his eyes slightly, and quietly combed his strength. Now, he has completely stabilized in the ultimate realm. Whether it is the strength of the divine power, or the fusion of the 9 rules, he has reached the top realm of the ultimate master. However, the next question is what to do next. Jian Wushuang understood in his heart that now he wants to break into the supreme realm. There is almost no possibility. The only thing that can improve his strength in a short time, only to understand the magical power. Make the power of magical power one more step. Perhaps I should try to go out of my way. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself, his eyes opened, and there was a gleam in his eyes. So my way, what is it? What is the word? There was a deep thought in Jian Wu's eyes. Tao is a very mysterious word. Throughout the ages, those who stood at the top of the universe have all opened up their own Tao. For example, Tailuo Jinzuan is holding a 3-foot sword, and will give up his invincible kendo. Thinking about it, Jian Wushuang felt that he seemed to grasp something, but when he pondered carefully, it was like the moon in the water. He didn't realize anything. Time flows away slowly. Just as Jian Wushuang was immersed in how to comprehend the Tao, the supreme message suddenly sounded in his mind. Sword unparalleled, come quickly to the supreme temple. The tone was full of haste and dignity. Suddenly, there was a cold flash in Jian Wushuang's eyes, and the bloodwave supreme circulated to him at this time. There was only one possibility. That is, the battle against his sword unparalleled, and the entire palace of life, is about to begin. Yes. Jian Wushuang returned a message, then stood up, pushed open the door of the chamber, and rushed towards the supreme temple. After a moment, Jian Wushuang came to the supreme temple. The supreme shrine, the supreme gap sits in the first place, the supreme blood wave, the great axe supreme, and the heavenly god, the white tiger supreme, respectively on the sides. Under the 5 of them, there are several swords in the temple of life. The supreme, who has never seen it before, wanted to come all the way out of the country, and was rushed back only after being summoned by the temple of life. All the supremes present were somewhat dignified, and Jian Wushuang asked them a good sentence, and they only responded with a slight jaw. Well, with the exception of the king of the 9 dragons and the king of the wind, who are still on the ancient road in the sky, now that everyone is here, let's talk about the situation. The expression of Supreme was a little serious. After glancing across Jian Wushuang's face, he slowly said, "The old man just got the exact information. The Taishi Temple, the Great Sun God Kingdom, and the Blood Temple. A total of 5 top forces have joined together to send a fleet to the Temple of my life. 7 days later, will arrive at the gate of my shrine." This remark fell apart except for Jian Wushuang. The other supremes were expressionless. I think I should have known about it. The sword unparalleled. His brow could not help but frown slightly. He did not expect that the first one to strike at him was not the Diwu Temple, but these 5 forces. But he didn't say much. All the people present were the mainstays of the Temple of Life, and there was of course a way to come. Supreme Gav continued, This is the first battle in our Shrine of Life. Therefore we must play the momentum of our shrine. Can you understand? Yes. The audience should be loud. Seeing this, Gav Supreme nodded slightly with satisfaction, and said in a deep voice, "This battle is just their temptation. I must wait to destroy the coalition of these 5 forces outside the shrine. 3 days later, you will be levied with your old husband and set foot on the coalition." Ha! A fierce cold mang flashed from the eyes of Supreme Gap. Chapter 43:21. Starfield far from the Temple of Life. 5 cosmic battleships that swept across the void glowed with icy luster, and the sails transformed into flags were engraved with the names of the 5 major forces, constantly passing through the stars, roaring and galloping fast. They were arrogant and high profile to the extreme. They pushed and crushed all the way, and did not make any avoidance at all. Some star thieves who were marching in the universe for repairs or roadblocks, and saw the 5 space warships, which were shocking, all changed their faces and quickly avoided them. Look, that is the battleship of the Taishi Temple. No, not only the Temple of Two Void, but also the Great Sun God Kingdom, the Blood Heaven Temple, the Qiyang God Kingdom, and the Starry Sword Sect. Where are these 5 forces going? Along the way, the cosmic practitioners who saw this scene from afar were exclaimed in astonishment. Whether it is the Taisian Temple, the Great Sun God Kingdom, the Starry Sword Sect, etc., they are all the top forces in the universe. On weekdays, sitting on the side of the universe, it is rare that such a large battle will run through the universe. Look where they are going is the Temple of Life. Within a short time, the news about the Taishi Temple and other 5 forces united to cut the Temple of Life, spreading at an extremely fast speed. The whole universe is uproaring. For a while the whole universe was turbulent, and countless people were excited about it. The universe has been calm for too long. Such top-level wars have not been seen for too long. Walk around and rush to the Temple of Life. Numerous people are rushing towards the Temple of Life, holding the lively mind. At the same time, within those 5 space battleships, 5 powerful men, exuding a supreme atmosphere, were standing on the deck of the middle battleship and discussing in a low voice. You said, will I be pressured by the Temple of Life to surrender the Taro Excalibur? A gentle and youthful man, holding a three-legged wine glass in his hand, he gently sipped the wine channel in his mouth. He was dressed in a suit of jinyahua, and was born with a handsome appearance, unlike the Supreme of the universe, but more like a handsome son-in-law. But his title in the universe is extremely inconsistent with his appearance. Bloody hand slaughter of Qiang Divine Kingdom. In the hundreds of chaos eras he has broken through, he has destroyed hundreds of star fields, and hundreds of millions of souls died in his hands. In the country of Qiang God, it is second only to Qiang God Emperor. Well, the Palace of Life seems to be powerful, but it is only supported by the Supreme Lord Gap. In the war that year, the owner of the Palace of Life disappeared, and the palace was seriously injured. If it was not for the adult to rescue him, afraid that GV also has fallen. Another old man, wearing a gossip robe, holding a duster in his hand, said sneer. It is reasonable to say that this dress should look like a fairy, but the old man has a raw triangular eye-hump nose, and a sharp-billed monkey cheek, which makes people unhappy at first glance. However, he also has an extraordinary origin. He is a knight of the great god of the kingdom of God. He has a status of more than one person in the country of the great god. Even the young emperor of the great kingdom of God, who has fallen, has seen him. Give a respectful title to the teacher. I saw him glancing at the other four supremes and continued. Today's shrine of life is like the bubble that looks gorgeous, but when it is touched, I don't believe it. The Supreme Lord Gava dares to go all out, and let the whole situation of life shrine be ignored. Furthermore, Your Majesty sent me here to slay the Temple of Life, and it is the second to the Terra Excalibur. The main thing is to bring the sword Wuxia back to the kingdom of God, accept the punishment of the heavens, and have respected the Emperor Shaoxi in the spirit of heaven. After he had finished speaking, another middle-aged man in cloth, with two bushy eyebrows, said Shunsheng. Yes, this time on behalf of Jianzong's crusade against life. This time, I don't really want to be the enemy of life, but I just want to conquer the Taro Excalibur. Presumably, the Supreme Lord Gap will not do it for a Taro Excalibur. Wait for me and let go. The other two Supremes did not speak, but their faces were extremely gloomy. One of them is impressively the master of the seventh temple of the Taishu Temple, Jiuquan, a bald old man with a skinny skin. And the last one is one of the right and left guardians of the Blood Temple, the right guardian Pluto. Well, as long as I wait quietly, then is the Temple of Life conscious. The gentle young man who started talking looked up and drank the sake in his hands. His eyes narrowed like foxes, and there was a flash of playfulness. Speaking of special life, I haven't killed it yet. Time flies. Huh. 5 space warships swept across the air, setting off countless winds. Prompted by the joint efforts of the 5 supreme powers, these 5 top-ranked space battleships broke out at a speed much faster than the speed of light. In a short time, they have reached the edge of the Shrine of Life, even the heavily arrayed method. The wrapped gate of the Life Shrine Palace is all at a glance. The 5 battleships stopped. The 5 supremes stepped down from the battleship, stepped on the starry sky, stared at each other, and there was a flash of cruelty in their eyes. The next moment they spoke at the same time. Taiko Shrine Special Envoy, come to visit the Temple of Life. Special envoys from the Great Sun God Kingdom, come to visit the Shrine of Life. Shinkong Jinzong Special Envoy, come to visit the Temple of Life. Blood Temple Special Envoy, come to visit the Temple of Life. 5 low voices, and at the same time explode outside the Temple of Life. Suddenly the sky was shaking. Countless people who came to watch the war deliberately saw a burst of excitement on their faces. They know that the battle between the top powers, which begins with sword warriors, is about to begin. Temple of Life, Supreme Temple. The Supreme was sitting in the first place, and the other great Supreme stood under him. Jian Wuxia in a black robe, carrying the Taro Excalibur, is also here. Hearing the sound of a blast outside the shrine, everyone had a cold flash in his eyes. All of you, with today's battle, will lay the foundation of my life temple. Gav Supreme was expressionless and slowly rose from his seat. Suddenly, a terror that crushed the universe forever, and deterred the floods of the heavens, and the earth circulated around the Supreme Lord of Gap. It seems that there is a monster that has been sleeping for millions of years, and is waking up. Yes. Bloodwave Supreme, Jian Wushuang, and others should be astonished that there is no timidity in their eyes. This battle they are not afraid. Even outside the Supreme Temple, those ordinary life shrine disciples are not afraid. Nothing more than a battle. Let's go. Gava Supreme nodded, stepped down from his seat, and walked towards the Temple of Life. The 4 Chief Supremes, such as the Bloodwave Supreme and the Giant Axe Supreme, are slightly behind half of Gap Supreme. Behind it, there are other ordinary Supremes of the Palace of Life. In the last place, there is Jian Wushuang. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. Chapter 43:22. When Gav Supreme led the 5 Chief Supremes, Jian Wushuang, and more than a dozen ordinary Supremes out of the Palace of Life, many disciples of the Palace of Life were already waiting outside. They looked so stern and stood upright they all shook their hands at the same time. I wait. I wish you, Supreme Master. The victory is triumphant, and triumphant return. Their voices converged, forming a huge sound wave boiling against the sky, straight into the clouds, shaking the sky of the whole life shrine. In their expressions, there was no shrinking timidity, only extremely firm. Seeing this scene, Gava Supreme flashed a warmth in his heart. These people will be the mainstay of the Temple of Life in the future. However, there was not much expression on his face, and he just nodded slightly in response. Jian Wushuang is mixed with many Supremes, and his face is slightly smiled. This time, because of him, the Temple of Life has attracted joint forces from all parties in the universe. If it is placed in some ordinary immortal inheritance gates, it has long attracted resentment and blame from its disciples. This scene did not happen. Everyone is unwaveringly supportive of Jian Wushuang, and many Supreme guards against the storm. This is all thanks to the system of the Life Shrine. Although silent, it is like a big family, bringing together many special lives wandering in the universe, supporting each other for growth and prosperity. Moreover, Jian Wushuang also saw among the many disciples of Life Shrines that he had been dominated by the magic wind that had been on the riverside of Wudao and had festivals with him. I haven't seen it for tens of thousands of years. The Lord of the Demon Wind has also broken through to the ultimate domination. At this moment, his edges and corners have been smoothed a lot. Looking at Jian Wushuang's eyes, he is also unswervingly supportive. This is the shrine of life that guards me, and I am willing to pay for my life. Jian Wushuang sighed in his heart. They didn't stay too much, so they walked towards the gate of the palace again. There Yinshan Supreme turned the mountain, condensed into an adult face, and said with a serious expression, Gap blood, I will guard the shrine. Click and wipe. The next moment, the gate of the Temple of Life opened. Gava Supreme walked in the first place, and the others followed behind, walking towards the starry sky step by step. There 5 space battleships were quietly suspended, squeezing across the void, and standing in front of the gate of the shrine. 5 Supreme Masters stood with their hands, each standing on the battleship of their respective forces, sneerily looking at Gaffa Supreme and others who came towards them. It's a great battle, and the Supreme of the Temple of Life is almost all out. The pupil of the great Sun God Kingdom shrank, his face shuddered, and then sneered. And the gentle man with a gentle appearance, such as jade, glanced from the faces of many Supremes, and there was a touch of greed in his eyes. He felt that the supremacy of this group of special lives was extremely strong, and if he could devour himself, cultivation would definitely increase. Excuse me, what's the matter at my shrine? Gav's Supreme expression indifferent and spoke lightly. The 5 Supreme Masters looked at each other. And to be honest, facing this many Supreme Masters headed by Supreme Lord Gave, anyone would be a little bit guilty. If it was weekdays, they would already greet the seniors with fear. But today is different. They represent not only themselves, but the top 5 forces behind them. They are confident that under the pressure exerted by these 5 forces together, even if they are the supreme ones, they must weigh their hearts. I saw the mung-bean eyes of the great Sun God Kingdom turn slightly, then stepped out, and his chest was raised and said, Extreme Gav, you are our predecessor. We dare not offend when we come to the shrine. We are here today for one thing. That is to hand over Jian Wushuang and Taro Excalibur. Speaking of the front, the tone of this teacher is quite respectful. But when it comes to the back, the tone suddenly turns cold, full of force cold. Yes, the Taro Excalibur is a cosmic weapon. How could it be held by a master? The middle-aged man of the starry sky sword sect stepped out and stared at Jian Wushuang tightly. Boom! The two shocking swords shot from the eyes of the middle-aged man, as if condensed into a substance, forming a huge, sharp pressure toward the sword without double pressure. Jian Wushuang saw a cold hum, and knew in his heart that this time the five major forces cut the Temple of Life together, taking him as a breakthrough, and this man from the Starry Sword sect wanted to give him a power. This look seems unusual, but it is actually the middle-aged man's kendo origin. Once Jian Wushuang was pressed under him, Jian Wushuang's sword heart will inevitably leave a shadow. However, compared to kendo, Jian Wushuang admits that he has not lost anyone. Jian Wushuang stepped out one step, without any fear, and shot his gaze towards the middle-aged man of the starry sky. The fourth source of kendo was triggered by him for the first time. Two swords were shot along Jian Wushuang's eyes, and they hit the eyes of the starry Jinzong middle-aged man straight. As if the tip of a needle was against my mang. Two lightnings that tore the night sky collided fiercely, sparking a spark. Jian Wushuang's two-sword intentions did not fall in the slightest, but there was a faint axe to kill the dragon, and the middle-aged man's sword intention was slightly depressed. The thief is so courageous. The middle-aged man's face suddenly became extremely furious. He didn't expect that he was dear to the divine supreme divine realm, but was actually depressed by Jian Wushuang in kendo comprehension. If you don't kill this child this time, I'm afraid it will become a serious problem in the future. Just when he couldn't help but want to have another attack, he saw the gentle man of Qiang God Kingdom raised his hand and pressed his hand, signaled him to be quiet, and then looked at Supreme Gav, smiling and said, "You are our predecessor, someone who has contributed to that catastrophe. If it were impossible, I would not come together. My God, Lord of the Qiang Divine Kingdom, this time sending the juniors to the Temple of Life has no other meaning. As long as you are willing to surrender Jian Wushuang and Tai Luo Divine Swords, the juniors will retreat themselves, and you can even make a promise. Do NT commit a shrine, fix everything." Having said that, he stopped talking and paused until he laughed. "Of course, if you don't want Senior Gav, no one in the world can force you. Younger people don't have this ability. But My Majesty the King, you also know that you always have a bad temper, and you can't rub a bit of sand in your eyes. If you say something, you must do it. At that time, what will be the consequences? The younger generation will not say much." The tone of this speech is mild, but in fact it is a hidden needle, which means murder and is full of threats. When this sentence came to an end, the supremacy of the other four major powers all stroked their beards, apparently with the same intention. Gafu Supreme heard the words, his eyelids lifted slightly, and he looked at him with a smile. "Qianyi, are you threatening the old man?" Chapter 43-23. Threat. Juniors are naturally afraid. The gentle youth calling Qian slightly arched his hands, then raised his head, staring directly at Gafu Supreme. "The junior is just telling the truth." Supreme Gav nodded, glanced at the others and asked gently, "You mean the same thing?" "Yes, if you are helpless, my great Japanese kingdom will never be opposed to the shrine." Dari Shengguo fluttered his hands to dust. Enin said. The Pluto, the right guardian of the Blood Temple, who did not say a word from beginning to end, said coldly, "Let's stop talking nonsense. Gafu, I came by the order of the Lord of the Palace. As long as Tai Luo Divine Sword and Sword Warrior, even if the two pick up one, I will turn around and leave, and never blame it." The middle-aged man of the Shinkong Jinzong also said in a deep voice, "Gaifu Supreme, presumably you also know that our Lord Wu Jianxian was one of the princes of Tai Luo Jianzun at that time. Now Tai Luo Jianzong has passed away. Excalibur naturally belongs to my Starry Sword sect." One after another, soft or hard answers. In short, It is to persecute Gav Supreme, to surrender Jian Wushuang and Tai Luo Excalibur. When Gav Supreme heard the words, a faint smile burst into the corner of his mouth, and his dim eyes narrowed. Do you think that the old man was seriously injured in that catastrophe that year? So you have decided that the old man will take care of the overall situation, and in order to protect the Temple of Life, he will hand over the Taro Excalibur and the sword unparalleled. As soon as this remark came to an end, the 5 great powers present were slightly changed, and as Supreme Gav said, they really had the intention. Although Gav Supreme is strong, he has already been seriously injured and is about to die. It is just a tiger with a tooth pulled out. It is because of these considerations that they dare to join forces to overwhelm the Palace of Life. Do you think that the old man's recuperation for so many years has long worn away his blood, and is unwilling to be an enemy? The voice fell, and Mori Han's cold killing intention spread around the center of Gaffa Supreme. All of a sudden, the 5 Supremes changed their faces. They only remembered at this time that the Supreme Lord Gav standing in front of them, in the battle of the catastrophe of that year, but the knives who have countless extreme gods. Suddenly, they stared at each other, with a faint retreat in their hearts. Gaifu, do you have to risk the world and fight for the sake of being a sword invincible? Only Pluto, the right guardian of the Blood Temple, asked coldly. Gaffa Supreme heard a sigh of relief and spit out only one word. Kill. Ha! Suddenly the words fell. I saw the 4 chief executives standing behind him, all laughing and rising into the sky. At the time of the Holocaust War, I couldn't escape from the world. Only my life shrine fought in all directions. Now dare to threaten my shrine. A sneer from the Heavenly Supreme, a golden bow of God appeared in his hand. At the next moment, I saw the 10 fingers of the Celestial Supreme resting on the arrow string, and pulled it back slightly. A scarlet-lined arrow was automatically placed on the arrow string. Ha! Immediately afterwards, he saw Tenma Supreme release his 5 fingers, and the scarlet arrow suddenly blasted out like a cannonball, directly breaking the void and blasting towards the great Sun God Kingdom Master. Damn! The guru's face suddenly became extremely furious. He didn't expect that this life shrine, which always seeks for peace, was so violent for the sword unparalleled that it would hurt the killer without a word. I saw him waving his right hand, and the brush in his hand immediately brushed out Dao Xianhui, welcoming the scarlet arrow that shot towards him. Ha! A shocking explosion came out. On the other side, the giant axe divine body instantly swelled, turning into an ancient giant with a huge height, holding the heavenly axe, stepping down 1 step, directly across 1,000 miles, and splitting towards the right heaven of the Blood Heaven Temple. I want to take away the sword unparalleled, first asked the axe in this hand. A sharp axe light, carrying the terrible dark yellow air, fiercely slashed at Pluto's head. The Pluto was not afraid when he saw this, and a humming sound was heard in his mouth. A black iron chain appeared under his right hand, and he flung it down suddenly, like a python swallowing the sun, and drew toward the axe Supreme. On the side of the White Tiger Supreme, I saw him leaping into the sky, arrogant, and the sound of terror spread out in circles. His Majesty's sharp gold and white tiger opened his huge mouth, and countless red thunders gathered in his mouth, turning into a storm of extinction, towards the 7th temple owner of the Taishu Temple, and the skinny bald old man in a monk robe. Kun Hong goes. Supreme King's face sank, his eyes twinkled, and he didn't dare to relax in any way. The right side of his hand was torn, and the void beside him was torn directly. Immediately, he saw him grabbing a hand from the void, and grabbing a black magic knife. Buddha does not hold a knife, but a knife becomes a demon. Kill! A hoarse voice came out of his mouth, and when he stepped on it, he suddenly turned into a black mang, and sprinted towards the White Tiger Supreme. There are many more ordinary Supremes, who have rushed out to block this void and cut off their back road. The sword unparalleled. It is the middle-aged man who looked at the starry sky sect under the light of a change of eyes. Although this person is more powerful than me, my understanding in Kendo is almost the same as mine. Just try this person. If I do use the Taro Excalibur, where is the limit? Jian Wushuang made his mind, then stepped on the foot. the black robe rolled, and suddenly turned into a black horizontal thunder between heaven and earth. Step by step faster, step by step, towards the middle-aged man of the starry sword sprint away. Wu Weeping Sword appeared in his hands. Speaking of which, he lost against the Black Hawk Supreme. For a large part of the reason, because of the extermination spear in the hands of the Black Hawk Supreme. So he had no choice but to sacrifice the Taro Excalibur and kill the Black Hawk Supreme. The second beheaded Supreme did not give him the opportunity to detour a war at all, and could only use the Taro Excalibur. Therefore, until now, Jian Wushuang did not know what his true strength was, and what he had reached. This sword is unparalleled. How dare you come to kill me? The middle-aged man of that starry sky sect saw the situation can't help but laugh for a while. Jian Wushuang, since you are looking for your own way, don't blame me for being rude. The middle-aged man sneered, and there was a killer in his eyes, and a pure white Excalibur appeared in his hands. Jian Wushuang, you die. The middle-aged man stepped hard, and suddenly turned into a sharp white man, splitting towards the sword unparalleled. Next moment, the two were black and white, and they collided fiercely. An astounding sword gas burst out, staring at the stars and swooping in all directions. Chapter 43-24. I saw that in the universe, one black, one white, and two sword-bearing figures were like a comet crashing into the earth. They collided with each other at a very fast speed, agitating endless sword energy. The Wu-crying Excalibur with no hands in the sword split on the snow-white Excalibur in the hands of the middle-aged man from the same diagonal, drawing a long string of sparks. Not broken. Is the rule extreme treasure? The middle-aged man shrank his pupils a little. You should know that the white knife sword in his hand is the ultimate treasure of the laws of chaos. He has bred dozens of chaos ages. After the weapon collided with him, he remained safe and sound. The sword is a good sword, but unfortunately people can't match it, it's wasted. The middle-aged man snorted coldly, but he didn't care. He swiped his right hand out fiercely, and the endless divine power poured out instantly, and he flung the sword unparalleled. Wow! Jian Wu's stature receded dozens of feet backwards, his legs in the starry sky, passing through two white marks. It is truly supreme, and it is really strong. Jian Wushuang raised his head, panting slightly, and secretly said, the difference between me and this ordinary supreme is the quality of divine power. The supreme divine power unique to the supreme is far beyond ordinary divine power. It is also supreme, relying on the dependence of the universe. After thinking for a while, Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and he sighed coldly. Since the qualitative gap cannot be surpassed, use the amount to make up. Suddenly, a majestic power reached the extreme, gathered in the hands of Jian Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang firmly stabilized the ultimate dominating realm, the strength of the divine power has suddenly reached nearly 30,000 times. Again, Jian Wushuang's black hair flew, and when he stepped, he rushed towards the middle-aged man again. Open the sky. Wu Weeping Sword trembled tens of thousands of times instantly, sending out a burst of devil crying, the voice of the Buddha chanting. The sword was cut out immediately, and it was cut off towards the middle-aged man like a shocking dragon. This sword Amami is to the extreme. Boy is daring. The middle-aged man smiled angrily and stepped forward. The white sword in his hand stabbed towards the sword without a pair. In the hands of the two, the Excalibur was added again. Before the middle-aged man split the sword Wushuang, he saw that Jian Wushuang had suddenly changed his tactics, and once again sneered. Cut the star! In an instant, thousands of energies condensed in the sword without hands, turned into a shocking sword rainbow that was nearly 5,000 feet long, and split again. This sword has a hint of Tao ? The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed for a moment, and the two shenmangs in his eyes soared again. This sun is the ultimate dominating realm. He has realized the level of the Tao, and in one move and one style, he is full of mysterious and obscure feelings. This child is so talented that it is rare in all ages. If it is not removed today, I am afraid that it will be the second Taro Sword Lord. Thoughts flashed in the eyes of the middle-aged man, And then he said in a deep voice, "Swordsmanship Xingha." Ha! The words fell, and I saw by Dis sword in his hand slamming up, a dazzling galaxy, rolling out from the void, and slamming into the silver sword rainbow of Jian Wushuang. This sword is like the overthrow of the heavens and the earth. The galaxy rolls back. The power is terrifying. Countless sharp white swords, turned into swallowing dragons, crisscrossing the world, facing the silver sword rainbow of nearly 5,000 feet, circled and rolled away. Just like a large python, the bright galaxy is directly entangled with nearly 5,000 feet of silver sword rainbow. Then, Xinghe Jinqi suddenly broke out. Click and wipe. Suddenly, the silver sword rainbow of nearly 5,000 feet shattered. Is this the sword art of the Starry Sword sect? Jian Wushuang looked up like the sky that hung for 9 days. And the volume of Xinghe turned from the sword's gas was a look of wonder. This Xinghe Jianzong deserves to be known as the top force in the universe with a sword. And this sword is nearing perfection from any angle, which is not comparable to him. Jian Wushuang, let's die. Just then the middle-aged man leaped and sneered. Sword unparalleled, remember, whoever killed you, the 3 elder Faxian of Starry Sword sect is also. This sword is called Bai Yan. Almost just for an instant, this middle-aged man's previous step is still 100 miles away. The next step has appeared in front of the sword without double-sided. The white sword in his hand turned into a blank, leading the roll of the broken star sword rainbow dazzling galaxy, slashing down towards Jian Wushuang. Step forward. Jian Wushuang's face suddenly changed slightly. The sharp sword gas, before it fell, already had the appearance of cracks on the surface of his body. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang loosened Wu Wei's Excalibur with his right hand and drank lowly. Forever night! Suddenly Wu Wei's Excalibur disappeared, and countless thick black mist poured from the soles of Jian Wu's feet, and then eroded toward the middle-aged man. The previous sword is unparalleled, and it takes some preparation time to use Yongye sword. But after he broke through the ultimate dominion, and found the original heart of Kendo, using Yongye sword again is almost instantaneous. Ha! A muffled noise came out, and then I saw these thick black mists, dragging the middle-aged man who was called the 3 Elders Flying Fairy, and dragged the bright galaxy into the kingdom of the night. The elder Faxian was gone, replaced by a huge black ball exuding coldness, dullness and stiffness. Next moment, among the black balls, elders of Faxian were angry and roared. Ha! I saw the elder Faxian driving Baiji Excalibur, ramming into the black ball, smashing the black ball roaring. A sharp sword exploded constantly, everywhere. Jian Wushuang stared at Yongye Kingdom, and had to say that the supreme strength is really beyond imagination. After Xiaoqing Kingdom became small, even the strongest invincible dominator would fall into it. It's possible to survive, but the 3 elders of Faxian are just the most ordinary supreme. But in just a few breaths of time, they will endanger the kingdom of Yongyi and be about to break this seat. With the erupting roar of the elder Faxian, the kingdom of Yongyi can no longer hold on, peeling off piece by piece. Immediately afterwards, I saw that my whole body became dry, and the hair fell off with a large part of elder Faxian jumping out. He gasped with a big mouth, staring at Jian Wushuang with a gaze on his face, and his face was iron and blue. The sword is unparalleled. This trick, this seat recognizes, is the supreme night sword of Tai Luo Supreme. Say, Tai Luo Jindian, is it in your hands? Jian Wushuang heard the words. There was no panic on his face, and he nodded and calmly replied, Yes, Tai Luo Jindian is indeed in my hands. But what about it? Chapter 43-25. The elder Faxian stared at Jian Wushuang. For some reason, there was a rush of jealousy in his heart that he had never noticed. He is jealous of Jian Wushuang's talents, and he finally has the power to fight against the Supreme. He was jealous of the sword Wushuang chants, and he was able to get both the Terra Sword Code and the Terra Magic Sword at the same time. This is a cosmic weapon. He was even more jealous that Jian Wushuang could make the Shrine of Life so sheltered, and let the half-footed Governance Supreme step into the coffin. For him, he was against the forces of the universe. Taking a deep breath, Elder Facian said coldly. Sword is unparalleled. You are not qualified to inherit the mantle of Tai Luo Sword Master. Terra Sword and Terra Sword Code should not belong to you. They should belong to my Starry Sword sect, to my Facian. Ha! The next moment, the Elder Facian patted his right hand, and the white sword was suspended in front of him, and his black hair flew up all over him. Sun Han said, the sword is unparalleled. On the talent of Kendo, this place admits that it is not as good as you. If you break through the supreme realm, this place will turn around when you see you. Unfortunately, if you are not supreme, you will eventually be ants. Crackling. Suddenly, the Elder Facian flicked his fingers in the void. Like a pipa, that white sword of the Excalibur suddenly shook violently. I saw that every time he played, the same white jade flying sword was split into the same white jade flying sword. After 7 consecutive shots, that white jade flying sword had been divided into 7, under the control of the Elder Facian. Now, like the 7 rainbows that run through the sky and the moon, they are chopped down towards the sword. Star Swordsmanship, the 7 great wild slashes. Ha! The distance of 1,000 feet is just around the corner. In just a blink of an eye, these 7 white jade flying swords are like 7 meteors. The sword was unparalleled, and did not dare to carelessly. The whole Bodhi's divine power was flowing wildly, and the dragon's blood secret technique was directly used to burn the divine power. It was fiercely chopped towards the 7 white jade flying swords. Ha! Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's breath soared, and he struck one of them with a white jade flying sword. Come again! Jian Wushuang gave a loud scream, and the fighting in his eyes broke out, soaring directly into the sky. With each sword he slashed, the sword's chi was horrible, and the turbulent turbulence turned the surroundings into a sea of raging fury that filled the world. When the Elder Facian saw this, he sneered at the corners of his mouth, 5 fingertips, as if there were invisible silk threads to control the 7 white jade flying swords. Under the change of fingering, the 7 white jade flying swords offensive changed abruptly, and no longer opened, it turned into an angle that was tricky and vicious. In time, Jian Wushuang's response became extremely strenuous. Ehe! Taking advantage of a gap, the Elder Facian combined his 5 fingers, and the 7 white jade flying swords suddenly merged into 7, reformed into a white sword, and stabbed in the position of the sword without a pair of chests. Puff! Suddenly, the sword flew backwards without a two-way flight. The body collapsed in the void, and then continued to reorganize. One sword unparalleled defeat. In the distance, some of the Supreme Palace of Life who was responsible for blocking the rear path saw the situation and shook his head slightly. Although Jian Wushuang is stronger, it is still a little younger than the top kendo strong in the universe, such as the elders taking off. There is a gap in the quality of divine power, and the result is hard work, which is unwise. Just when they hesitated to go up to help the sword unparalleled, the sword Wushuang that quickly flew backwards all the way, but moved backward suddenly. Soon, a golden light appeared. Fencing dawn. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang disappeared, and between the heavens and the earth, there was only one gold thread, as if the Shindian that tore the endless night shot at the Facian elder in a forward-looking trend. The thunder roared, and the electric light shone. The void was torn directly, breaking open numerous void fragments. Jian Wushuang is shrouded in the fierce golden light, coming across the sun and the moon. This is the second form of Tai Luo Jiandian breaking dawn. When the Elder Facian saw this, his face changed suddenly, a feeling of palpitations, and he climbed up to his back. For the first time, when he faced the sword unparalleled, a great terror between life and death emerged. Breaking dawn is a sword power that can only be used by the Supreme. How can this be? There were countless fears on his face, and he immediately bit his teeth, and there was a decisive flash in his eyes. You have to come up with a killer. Otherwise, I am afraid that I will become the third Supreme, who died under the sword without hands. Immediately, the Elder Fijian's eyes flooded with light, and the pupils in his eyes suddenly turned into 2 small swords, slowly opening. I raise Xinghe with my sword. Xinghe sees me like this. Star Swordsmanship, Star Sword, boom. Suddenly, the stars and stars are full of light and masterpieces. Countless channels of power from the deepest part of the stars suddenly rose into the sky, like a meteor, turned into bright stars, rushing towards the elders of Facian. This sword moves all the stars in the sky. The power of countless stars came from the laser, continually meeting, densely packed, covering the sky and converging in the hands of the elder Facian. At this moment, the body of the elder Facian suddenly became transparent and clean, and he was lifted up by the stars, as if he had fallen into the center of the vortex, and became the master of the stars. Cut! Elder Facian shouted. His expression became a bit distorted. Suddenly, a swordman gathered by the power of countless stars was cut off from the elder Facian. The void was torn directly by this swordman, and turned into a sea of chaos. Numerous sword gas rolled up like a dragon as the sky is rolling, in the heavens and the earth. A long column of sword air supporting the sky, and the sky is formed. The towering roars turned the clouds and mists of nearly 10,000 miles into powder. Ha! The next moment, a great noise came out. This sword was severely chopped on the dawning golden light transformed by the sword unparalleled. In a short time, Jianwu's body shook violently, and the golden daybreak sword light around the whole body was constantly being abraded and cut. In the end, Jian Wushuang's breaking dawn sword was suddenly broken open, and Jian Wushuang was directly split again. Sword unparalleled, go to death with peace of mind. Elder Facian's eyes were low, and he was condensed by the starry sky. He came down to the world, and continued to attack Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stared at Elder Facian closely. His expression was gloomy to the extreme. Almost there. As long as he is stronger, this elder Facian is not his opponent. He can truly rely on the power of the Terra Excalibur to truly achieve the sword-cutting supreme. It's just a pity that it's a little worse after all. When the sword Wushuang considered whether to lift the seal of the supreme sword of Tai Luo, to kill the elder Facian, or escape, a white-haired indifferent figure suddenly swept from the edge of the sky, at a speed far faster than the elder Facian, stepped in front of the sword without double-sided. The next moment, I saw the white-haired indifferent figure, slowly raised his hand, and grabbed the swordmang that was split by the elder Facian. Chapter 43 26 Duel. Threatening? Junior naturally wouldn't dare. The gentle-looking young man called Qianwu cupped his hands before raising his head. He looked straight at Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu and said, "This junior is merely stating the facts." Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu nodded his head and swept his gaze across the others. He then asked indifferently, "You guys have the same intention?" "That's right. If we have no choice, the Great Sun Divine Kingdom will never make an enemy of the Divine Palace." The Imperial Advisor flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand and said darkly, "The right protector of the Blood Sky Palace, the Dark King, who had not said a word since the beginning, said coldly, 'Cut the crap. Gai Fu, I'm here on the orders of the Hall Master. I only want the Tarot Divine Sword and Jian Wushuang. Even if I pick up one of them, I'll turn around and leave. I'll forget about the past." The middle-aged man from the Starry Sky Sword sect also said, "Supreme Master Gai Fu, I'm sure you know that our sect master, the Martial Sword Immortal, was one of the cultivation partners of the Tarot Sword Master. Now that the Tarot Sword Master has passed away, the Tarot Divine Sword naturally belongs to the Starry Sky Sword sect." The soft and hard answers came one after another. In short, they were forcing Supreme Master Gai Fu to hand over Jian Wushuang and the Tarot Divine Sword. Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu's lips suddenly curled into an inexplicable smile when he heard this. His turbid eyes narrowed as he said, "Do you think that I'll hand over the Tarot Divine Sword and Jian Wushuang to protect the Divine Life Palace because I was seriously injured in the catastrophe?" As soon as he said this, the faces of the supreme beings of the 5 major forces changed slightly. Just as Supreme Master Gai Fu had said, they had indeed planned to do this. Although Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu was strong, he had long been seriously injured and was on the verge of death. He was just a tiger without its teeth. It was precisely because of this consideration that they dared to join forces and suppress the Divine Life Palace. Do you think that after so many years of recuperating, I've long worn out my bloodlust, and am unwilling to make an enemy of others? As soon as he finished speaking, a cold killing intent spread out from supreme martial artist Gai Fu. In an instant, the 5 great masters' expressions changed drastically. Only now did they remember that Supreme Master Gai Fu, who was standing in front of them, had killed countless Supreme Divine Realm experts during the Great Catastrophe. Instantly, they looked at each other, and a faint feeling of retreat rose in their hearts. Gai Fu, are you going to risk universal condemnation and start a war with our forces for a mere Jian Wushuang? Only the right protector of the Blood Sky Palace, the Dark King, asked coldly. Hearing this, Supreme Martial Artist Gai Fu sighed lightly and only spat out a single word: kill. Bang! The moment he finished speaking, the 4 lead disciples standing behind him all laughed and rushed into the sky. During the Great Catastrophe, all of you hid from the world, and only the Divine Life Palace fought in all directions. Now you dare to threaten my Divine Palace? Supreme Heavenly Dipper sneered as a golden divine bow appeared in his hand. In the next moment, Supreme Heavenly Dipper placed his fingers on the bowstring and pulled it back gently. Whoosh! A scarlet arrow covered in divine patterns automatically knocked itself onto the bowstring. Whoosh! Supreme Heavenly Dipper then released his fingers, and the scarlet arrow shot out like a cannonball. It broke through the void and shot toward the Imperial Advisor of the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Damn it! The Imperial Advisor was extremely shocked and angry. He had not expected that the Divine Life Palace, which had always sought peace, would be so violent and kill Jian Wushuang without any hesitation. With a wave of his right hand, the horsetail whisk in his hand instantly emitted rays of immortal radiance, which met the scarlet arrow that was shooting at him. Bang! An earth-shattering explosion was heard. On the other side, Supreme Giant Axe's divine body expanded instantly and turned into an ancient giant that was tens of thousands of feet tall. He held the sky-splitting divine axe and took a step forward. He crossed tens of thousands of miles and hacked down at the right guardian of Blood Sky Palace, the Nether King. If you want to take Jian Wushuang away, you'll have to ask my axe first. A sharp axe light with terrifying black and yellow chi hacked at the Nether King's head. The Nether King wasn't afraid at all. He snorted coldly and flipped his right hand. A black iron chain appeared in his hand, and he gently threw it toward Supreme Giant Axe like a sun-swallowing python. As for the White Tiger Supreme Martial Artist, he leaped into the sky and roared arrogantly. Terrifying sound waves spread out in circles. The sharp metal white tiger under him opened its huge mouth, and countless red lightning gathered in its mouth, turning into a world-destroying storm. It blasted toward the 7th Hall Master of the Great Void Temple, the skinny bald elder in a monk's robe, Jiu Kun. Supreme Jiu Kun's face sank, and his eyes flickered. He didn't dare to relax in the slightest. He pulled with his right hand, and the void beside him was torn apart. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed a black demonic blade. If a Buddha did not wield a saber, he would become a devil with a saber. Kill! A hoarse voice came out from his mouth. He took a step forward and turned into a black light, charging toward the White Tiger ruler. There were even more ordinary supreme martial artists who flew out one after another, sealing off the void and cutting off their escape routes. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered as he looked at the middle-aged man from the Starry Sky Sword sect. Although this person's cultivation is stronger than mine, his comprehension of the way of the sword is almost the same as mine. I can use this person to test my limits if I don't use the Tarot Divine Sword. Jian Wushuang made up his mind. Then, he took a step forward and his black robe fluttered. Suddenly, he turned into a black thunderbolt between heaven and earth. Step by step, he sped up and dashed toward the middle-aged man from the Starry Sky Sword sect. The Wuxia Divine Sword appeared in his hand. Speaking of which, a large part of the reason why he couldn't defeat Black Eagle Ruler was because of the god-slaying spear in his hands. Thus, he had no choice but to use the Tarot Divine Sword to kill Black Eagle Ruler. As for the second Supreme Martial Artist, he didn't give him a chance to fight in a roundabout way. He could only use the Tarot Divine Sword. Therefore, until now, Jian Wushuang still did not know what his real strength was. Jian Wushuang dared to kill me? The middle-aged man from the Starry Sky Sword sect couldn't help but laugh in anger. Jian Wushuang, since you're looking for death, don't blame me for being impolite. The middle-aged man laughed coldly, as a murderous look appeared in his eyes. A pure white divine sword appeared in his hand. Jian Wushuang, go to hell. The middle-aged man took a heavy step forward, and turned into a sharp white light, slashing toward Jian Wushuang. The next moment, the two, one black and one white, collided together. An earth-shattering sword chi exploded, and swept across the starry sky. Chapter 43:27. Jian Wushuang stepped in, stretched out his hands and rubbed his frosty hair, and smiled. Stupid girl, just stay in the manor. What are you waiting for? Lung Rushuang silently said nothing, but saw Jian Wushuang was all right, and a bright smile on his face. Well, go back. Jian Wushuang smiled a little, and then talked to them again. After seeing nothing was arranged, he returned to the manor of the sixth mountain with coldness. The palace of life fell into a brief silence. However, it was not quiet for a few days, and the battle at the gate of the life shrine immediately spread out. Suddenly, the whole universe was in an uproar. Countless people were shocked, feeling incredible and unbelievable about what the palace of life did. This is too crazy. The life shrine that has always been concerned about peace. This time it has such a big action, killing the 5 forces to send messengers. If it doesn't, it's amazing. Who dares to belittle the shrine of life now? Well, that Gavo is indeed the man who survived the ancient catastrophe, and he has such great courage that he has been fighting against the top 5 strengths in a row. At this moment, countless people's perceptions of the Temple of Life have completely changed. In their previous cognition, the Temple of Life is a hidden world that does not ask about the world, and does not fight for it. But it was not until this war that they suddenly realized. Come, once the life shrine is angry, what a horror! Countless people praised it, but others also whispered in secret. This life shrine is really trying to find a way out. It's true that if the palace of life offends only one side of the force, it doesn't matter. Even if it offends both sides of the power, it can be taken over by virtue of the strength of the palace of life. But the palace of life offends the 5 parties directly, no doubt. Well, don't forget too, the Taishi Shrine, and the old enemy Diwu Shrine, carefully calculated, can be more than 5 forces. I think Supreme is also confused for a moment, even made this stupid decision, for a sword unparalleled. Regardless of the overall situation, I think that the Palace of Life will soon be destroyed in the hands of Supreme. Although the talent of Sword Wushuang is high, it is not irreplaceable. For example, it has become the Supreme King of 9 calamities. In my opinion, it is no worse than Sword Wushuang. There is absolutely no need to put the Temple of Life in such a place for a Sword Wushuang at stake. If I am Supreme Gap, I will first hand over Jian Wushuang and Tai Luo Excalibur, and then wait for King Jiujia and others to fully grow up, and then try to figure it out. Suddenly, discussions about the Temple of Life came one after another, and rumors began to flow. However, before the storm ended, the Temple of Life once again blew a shocking bomb in the universe. My life shrine, declare war on Taishi Temple. My life shrine, declare war on the great Sun God Kingdom. My life shrine, declare war on the Blood Temple. My life shrine, declare war on the Kingdom of Qiyang. My life shrine, declare war on Starry Sword Sect. Other forces, who want to be enemies with my life shrine, will also accompany you to the end. On this day, the sound of Gafu Supreme turned into billowing waves, conveying 9 days and 10 places, and shocked the universe. This time all people are shocked. The Shrine of Life should be 1 enemy and 5. Suddenly, the entire universe was completely crazy. Taishi Temple. The expression of Bingyu Extreme Taiching reached the extreme, and anger could not be restrained, and he rushed to the top of his head, making him tremble all over. This time he sent the master of the 7th palace, Jiuquan, as the messenger to the Temple of Life. Although he wanted to put pressure on the Temple of Life and surrender the Taro sword and sword unparalleled, he never thought about going to life. Shrine life and death war. Otherwise, he wouldn't just send a master of the 7th palace, Jiuquan, to the army directly. As a result, he didn't expect that the Temple of Life even killed Kuei Kuan directly, leaving no room for it. It's like slap in the face fiercely fanned. Okay, declare war on my two virtual temple, right? You are not afraid of the Temple of Life. Why have I been too afraid of the temple? The cold mang flickered in the eyes of Bingyu Supreme, and the sound was cold. Come here. Respond to this seat. The battle at the Temple of Life. This seat is due. At the same time, deep in the universe, the great Sun God Kingdom, the great Sun God Emperor, who created countless legends, also made a battle of papers out of the palace of the 9 dynasties in response to the battle with the Shrine of Life. Immediately afterwards, the top power Qiang God Kingdom built in the endless desert, the Blood Tian Temple, which has always been erratic, has been fighting. For a while, except the Starry Sword sect, the other 4 forces all formally issued war books to the Temple of Life, tearing their faces. In a short time, the universe was turbulent, and the wind was rising. In the depths of the stars, a palace suspended above 9 days is calm. The palace is peculiar in shape, built like a divine sword, narrow and sharp, quietly suspended. On the plaque of the palace, the 4 large characters of Starry Sword sect are engraved. The notes are sharp, like a silver hook iron painting. Dragons and phoenixes walk around. It makes people feel a sharp sword coming from just a glance. Look straight. Here is the sword master of the Starry Sword sect, Wu Jianxian. Wu Jianxian is a legend in the entire universe. When he was young, he was expelled from the sect by the Starry Sword sect, and has been wandering until he met Tai Luo Sword Emperor. Kendo has been repaired for thousands of miles, and has skyrocketed. Finally, he returns in a kingly posture, dominate the Starry Sword sect, and become the strongest sword master in the history of Starry Sword sect. Wu Jiangxian's legend cannot be said for 3 days and 3 nights, but the most eloquent people are sighing. Wu Jianxian is the only female sword immortal who has swept the world. At this moment, in the main hall of the Starry Sword sect, a glamorous woman in red, with black hair tied up, 2 strands of black hair hanging from her forehead, and a red armor, sitting on a throne. Her eyebrows were cold, and there was no emotional change on her face. There was a faint red mark between her brows. This person is the first sword respect in the world, Wu Jianxian. She was sitting high on a red sandalwood chair. Under her, 8 elders were standing respectfully. Master Sovereign, isn't Mo Feina's life shrine so provocative? Can I wait to hear? An old man with white hair stepped out and said, Yes. The other 4 top powers are now issuing war books to officially declare war on the Temple of Life. Lord Sovereign, if our Star Sword sect does not respond, would it not let the whole cosmic smile? Master Sovereign, at this moment, there must be no woman's love. Another thin man, dressed in black and wearing a bucket hat, said vaguely. Although the other elders did not speak, the determined application on their faces did not indicate that they meant the same thing as the black-clad man. Wu Jiangxian's expression was as plain as water. His eyes slowly swept from the face of the 8 elders, and finally he said, This sovereign has decided that he will not fight with the Temple of Life, so don't waste your lips. After speaking, Wu Jianxian stood up and walked out of the hall. Chapter 43-28. After Wu Jianxian left, there were many whispered discussions in the main hall of the Starry Sword sect. Benevolence is not in power. Although the Lord Sovereign is strong, he is too kind after all, and is not decisive enough. That's right, that's the case for women. After all, it's less male. Well, now the Temple of Life has blatantly provoked us, and we ended up silent. Didn't it make the whole universe laugh? Several elders whispered, shaking their heads and sighing and discussing. Among the crowd, the only thin man wearing duyi, wearing black, with very thin lips, said nothing. He raised his head to look at Wu Jiangxian's back, and a sneer was drawn from the corner of his mouth. Xingkong Jianzong, the Lord's dormitory. Wu Jianxian sat on a bench with her eyes closed. Jian Qing Chan standing behind her, gently rubbing her temples for her. Master, do you have any troubles? Jian Qing Chan said quietly. Wu Jianxian opened his eyes when he heard the words, and there was a hint of exhaustion in his eyes. And he said, Qing Chan, You are with me, not an outsider. You say. What does it mean that the elder Ji Chanchan constantly contradicts the lead singer of this ancestor? Jian Shiqing Chan thought for a moment. A flash of hesitation flashed on his face, and finally bit his teeth. Master Zong, depending on the younger, elder Jiu Chan doesn't see your woman's home, and wants to force the palace to usurp him. After she finished speaking, when she saw Wu Jianxian didn't speak, she continued to say, Master Sovereign, little courage to say something. You don't know, the elder Jiu Chan has been saying in the Zong how you are not. And now Zong, there are many disciples within you who are very critical of you, waiting for you to show your strength and restore your reputation in the battle against the Temple of Life. Wu Jianxian frowned, heard the words and waved. Okay, this lord knows you can step back. Master Sovereign, now it's time to fight against the Shrine of Life. It's your best to increase your reputation. Jian Shiqing Chan wanted to say more, and saw Wu Jianxian let go, and gave her an expressionless look and said, I said just to step down, didn't you hear? When the sword-serving green cicada saw this, her heart suddenly became cold, knowing that she was getting worse, and she quickly lowered her head and said humbly, The Lord, please take a good rest, and the younger will retire. After that, Jian Shiqing Chan left. After she left, there was a moment of silence in the hall. Wu Jianxian stood up from the bench, walked in front of the bar window, and looked down at the unknown place of the starry sky with a hand, and there was a touch of complexity in her eyes. Why didn't she understand what everyone said in the hall today, and what Jian Shiqing Chan said just now? However, there was only one small toad. She didn't take it seriously. Taro. That sword can only get Taro Excalibur and Taro Sword Code. It is also half of your mantra. Want to come? You must recognize him, right? Wu Jianxian murmured. Inside the Temple of Life, as the Shrine of Life declared war on the 5 major forces, there was a storm in the universe, but in the Shrine of Life, there was abnormal peace. Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang didn't get along for a long time, so they started a new round of retreat. Jian Wushuang knows that everything now is just the beginning. Only when he becomes stronger can he protect himself in the face of the next storm. What is that? Jian Wushuang lowered his head to look at the palm of his hand, where a strip of road converged densely, like a mountain range, rolling over and over, finally converging into a complete palm print. Everyone's palm print is different, so everyone understands the same way. Tao, don't ask, don't hear, don't follow, you can't find. Even if I consult the Supreme of Bloodwave, he can't say one thing. He can only comprehend by himself. The Tao can only be created by yourself. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself. He knew that once he truly realized the Tao, it would be his chance to break through the supreme divine realm. After a long time, Jian Wushuang sighed lightly, wanting to comprehend that staying in the Temple of Life and Enlightenment, there is no role at all. Only to go out to see the mountains and the sea, watch the tide ebb and flow, east-facing Flint, and experience the cool world. Only 100 human beings have the opportunity to truly understand the Taoism. It seems. It's time to go out for a walk. At the same time, in the far north of the universe, in the Dead Star Domain, one of the 9 taboos. Hey! A faint beam of yellow light suddenly penetrated the endless nebula and mist, spreading out from the inside to form a long cosmic passage. Immediately, I saw a terrifying cosmic warship slowly moving out of this dead star field. The shape of this space battleship is extremely horrible. It is actually composed of a keel of dragon bones, like a bone dragon, which traverses the starry sky. 1, 2, 3. 9 bone dragon battleships sail out of the dead stars. They were juxtaposed, and the momentum immediately swept across 9 days and 10 places. In an instant, within 1,000,000 miles, countless bite-eating beasts wandering in the fissures of the void shivered, as if they saw the ancestor of the king, whispered in a low voice, show court service. At this moment, on the deck in the middle of the 9 bone dragon battleships, the master of the Diwu Temple, Black Feather, stood side by side with a young man wearing black armor. The evil-looking young man's eyes were faintly golden. On both sides of his skull, 2 rounded and branched antlers were born. His cultivation is much lower than the master of Diwu Temple. but the coercion emitted from the inside out is not inferior to the master of Diwu Temple. If Jian Wushuang is here, he will recognize that this evil young man is actually the dragon enforcer Long Jiu, who used to be in the Xingkong Ancient Road. Long Jiu, now the Temple of Life is surrounded by enemies in all directions, which is our best shot. We take this opportunity to kill the Temple of Life unexpectedly. The master of Diwu Temple looked at the dragon law enforcer Long Jiu side by side, and said with a smile. Long Jiu heard no expression and said coldly, "Why do our dragons need to be surprised?" After that Long Jiu waved. "Let's go the Temple of Life." Rumble. Suddenly, 9 keel warships slowly sailed away from the far north. On this day, a sound like a decree sounded in the starry sky of the entire universe. Xian, the sword of life Jingu sword is unparalleled, and wantonly slays the people of the Wulong tribe, and confess his death. The shrine of life as its gate teaches Wufang, and commits the crime of default. Chapter 43-29. The dragon race is born. This news is like dropping a bomb on a calm lake, and the whole universe is boiling and setting off thousands of waves. The dragon race is one of the most powerful races in the entire universe. It is rumored that at the beginning of the universe, when the world was still chaotic, countless chaotic spirits were interdependent. One of them was particularly overbearing. After devouring countless spirits, it gave birth to spiritual wisdom and shaped the flesh. This is the first dragon in the world, also known as Zulong. The ancestor dragon is the head of the Wanlong. The current dragon family is after the ancestor dragon. If the ancestor dragon had fallen in that catastrophe that year, the current dragons would still be the masters of the universe. Of course, although the ancestor dragons have fallen, they have the second and third generations of dragons, and their strength cannot be underestimated. Their heritage, far from being comparable to some top forces, dragon race, life shrine cannot resist. At the same time, Temple of Life, Supreme Temple. Gav Supreme sat in the first place expressionless. Several other Supremes stood under him, with extremely ugly expressions. They did not expect that when they declared war on the 5 major forces, the dragons were born at this time, and the goal was directed at Jian Wushuang. The atmosphere fell into a dignity like never before. The word long is like a big mountain, and it is overwhelmingly heavy in the hearts of everyone. Gaifu Supreme, we are not afraid of the 5 forces, we can fight one another, but with a dragon, how should we deal with it? Baihu Supreme said in a deep voice. Even if he had always been violent, at this moment, the warfare in his eyes had disappeared. No one knows how long the dragon clan, which has been living for a long time, has been living for thousands of years in the hidden world. The strength of the dragons alone was far from being able to resist in the Shrine of Life that year. Yeah, Lord Gav, once the dragons come to the door, what can we resist in the Temple of Life? Another ordinary face with a long face said. His voice was full of anxiety. Gav Supreme did not speak, but lowered his eyes were opaque. Master Gafu, the dragons were born, and they went to the shrine. Once we deal with it a little carelessly, it will bring us to the Shrine of Life. The long-faced Supreme stepped forward and continued. After speaking, he glanced at the sword Wushuang standing at the end of the temple and sighed. Master Gafu, the fate of Jian Wushuang is fate, but the fate of other shrine disciples is also fate. Do you want to put the lives of other thousands of life shrines at risk for one sword? In this sentence, although he didn't point out what it means to cover the Supreme, which one is the dull one present? How can you not hear the meaning of this long-faced Supreme statement? To put it bluntly, there are only 2 ways before the Palace of Life. Or, as the dragon said, kill Jian Wushuang, hand in Jian Wushuang's head, and then apologize openly to the whole universe. Either, it is for the sword unparalleled, the negative stubborn resistance. The other Supreme heard all the words in silence, bowed their heads and said nothing. Even if they have always loved Jian Wushuang, Bloodwave Supreme and Giant Axe Supreme, they opened their mouths to say what they wanted to say, and they were forcibly swallowed again. They love the swords, yes, but they are the chief and supremacy of the Palace of Life, and the whole Palace of Life is on their shoulders. Jian Wushuang stood at the end of the temple and looked at the silent people in the audience. And his heart was determined. He is responsible for everything that is happening now, so he is responsible for it. His sword is unparalleled. He is never a greedy for fear of death. He needs someone else to protect him. Life Shrine has done enough for him. As soon as this remark was made, everyone in the audience couldn't help looking at each other and wondering, what does this mean? Chapter 43:30. Looking at the doubtful eyes of everyone, Gafu Supreme said slowly, "Since the palace of our life has been established by the Lord of the Palace, the disciples in the palace can fight to death. If today, we will execute the sword without a pair of swords, if we encounter this kind of thing again in the future, do we have to execute other disciples to please other forces to protect the temple?" As soon as this remark came out, everyone was in the heart. Master Gafu, you are right. If not, who of us wants to see Jian Wushuang die? The Qingying Supreme raised his head and looked at Gafu Supreme. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Since he didn't want to be a wicked, then he would let him be the wicked. Gafu gave him a glance and said, "When did I say this? Is there no way?" After speaking, Gafu Supreme turned his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang. Shen said, "Jian Wushuang, you listen well. From today on, you are no longer a disciple of my life. This seat deprives you of your status as a disciple of the Palace of Life. You are only allowed to leave the Palace of Life today. You must not stay. You understand?" When it comes to the last sentence, Supreme Gav has already used a bit of power, like Huang Zhongda Lu ringing deafening feedback. The words came as a shock. Gov Supreme I. Jian Wushuang's expression flickered, and he was about to speak. Seeing that Gafu Supreme's face sank, he scolded, "Don't you understand the words of this seat? From now on, you will no longer be a disciple of my life, and leave quickly." Looking at the cold and scowling expression of Gafu Supreme, Jian Wushuang's heart swayed for a while, and a warmth surged in his heart. He was not a fool, and what he meant by Supreme Gav he knew well. However, once they leave, will the dragons really easily let go of the Temple of Life? Go out. Gav Supreme shook his sleeves. A soft but powerful force waved out, knocking the sword Wushuang from the Supreme Temple. Huh! Jian Wushuang hit the ground outside the temple fiercely. He struggled to stand up from the ground. His eyes turned to the Supreme Temple. His fists clenched involuntarily, and his nails fell deeply into the flesh. The next moment, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, resolutely turned, and swept away towards the sixth mountain. Inside the Supreme Temple, after Jian Wushuang left, the hall became silent. Everyone didn't speak, but the blood was supreme, and a smile appeared in his heart. Just leave, just leave. Extreme Gav, Jian Wushuang is gone. Then what shall we do? Qing Supreme took a deep breath. Shen said. Gav Supreme's severe expression had been alleviated. He glanced at Qing supremely and said calmly, "Qing Yan, it seems that after so many years of rest and recuperation, you have already worn away your blood. Only then did you just hear the word dragon, and you were frightened." Gov Supreme I. Qingying Supreme heard the words. His face suddenly changed slightly, and when he was about to speak, he saw that Gawaf waved his hand. Well, no need to say any more. Although the dragon race is strong, what about it? Now Jian Wushuang is not a disciple of my life shrine, and has been expelled. If the dragon race wants to find trouble for him, he will go to the universe to find him. And my life, what does the palace have to do? Moreover, Gavri glanced over everyone's face, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. There was a sharp sense of sharpness on that old-modeled face. The Lord of the Palace disappeared that year. Do you really think that the Lord of the Lord did not leave a few moves after the move? The words fell. Everyone in the room was shocked. Everyone said no more. The sixth mountain, the manor where Jian Wushuang is located. Jian Wushuang stepped heavily into the compartment. Fu Jun, are you okay? Lung Wushuang seemed to have heard any news. When Jian Wushuang walked in, he quickly got up and asked anxiously, "I'm fine." Jian Wushuang shook his head, then took a deep breath and said, "Frosty, pack up and we leave here." "It is good." Lung Rushuang did not ask why she was in a hurry to leave. She has always been this character. As long as Jian Wushuang made the decision, she would not ask more. After a moment, Jian Wushuang put the cold as frost into the Fengshan monument and was going to leave. Walking in front of the gate of the Temple of Life, Jian Wushuang looked back. In the Temple of Life, many disciples looked at him with complex eyes, and their emotions were difficult to understand. I will definitely come back, definitely. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, and there was a determination in his eyes. Just as Jian Wushuang was about to leave, suddenly, a stream of light burst towards him. The streamer fell, revealing the bloodshot supreme figure. He came to see him off. Extreme blood in the hall today. Jian Wushuang arched his hand at him. After waiting for Jian Wushuang to finish, Sun Bo Sun waved his hand and smiled slightly. You and me, no need to say this. After a moment of pause, Bloodwave Supreme said, Jian Wushuang, if you go by this way, you are afraid of the dangerous frontier. You must be extremely careful. It is best to change your name and change your appearance. Jian Wushuang heard the words, nodded and said, I understand. Bloodwave Supreme said, turned over with his right hand, took out a scarlet jade card, and said, Jian Wushuang, this jade card has my 3-strike power. Please carefully close it. Rua, if you really encounter a life and death crisis, the 3-strike force in this jade brand wants to save your life. Jian Wushuang is not an arrogant person, and when Yen took down this jade card and nodded hard toward the Supreme of Blood, all words of thanks, no need to say more, are in my heart. Seeing a slight smile, Bloodwave Supreme continued and said, Take care of yourself when you go. By the way, Supreme Lord gave me a message for you. No matter what, your sword Wushuang will always be a disciple of my life. After a moment of pause, Bloodwave Supreme laughed. There are 9 kings of calamity. Let me also tell you, don't die. He is waiting for you at the universe race. He also wants to try. Dragon slay is what a taste. Jian Wushuang heard the words. His heart was moved for a while, and a lot of pride was poured out. Extreme blood, rest assured, I will not die. Okay, that sword is unparalleled. We will meet again in the future. Bloodwave Supreme patted Jian Wushuang's shoulder. Farewell to Jian Wushuang. Then I'm gone, Supreme Blood, you take care. The sword Wushuang strode away. He took the cold as frost, turned into a streamer, blasted towards the vast starry sky far away. I went today regardless of the deadline, no matter the way back. He will be alone again, facing the sea of stars. Far away, the Temple of Life has turned into a small black spot, thousands of miles away. Jian Wushuang turned his head, took a deep look at the Palace of Life and Supreme Blood, and said in a silent voice, Meet again. Chapter 43-31. In the vast sky, a cosmic boat is quickly leaving the center. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the universe, looking through the black light mirror, watching the spacecraft constantly moving from bustling to deserted. The previous spacecraft, Jian Wushuang, is no longer in use. This spacecraft was obtained from the ring of Qingquan after he did not know who was killed when he was on the ancient road of the starry sky. Frost, the 5 planets are in front, let's rest there. Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. Sitting as cold as frost, he nodded after hearing the words and said, Okay. The 5 planetary domains, among the universe of thousands of star domains, can only be regarded as a very ordinary star domain, and the person with the highest strength in the star domain is just the ultimate dominator. Jian Wushuang fled this way, choosing mostly star fields like the 5 planetary domains. A few hours later, a pale blue sea of stars appeared in front of the sword without double sides, which was the 5 planetary domain. Arrived. Jian Wushuang stopped the spacecraft, and with a big wave of his hand, his appearance changed a little. I saw that he had a round beard on his handsome and cold face. His eyes became a little deeper, and his face became a bit more square. Although there were not many changes in the facial features, whoever stood at this moment in front of him, it is absolutely impossible to recognize the slightly rough client in front of him as a sword unparalleled. It's not over yet. Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and he saw that his relatively thin figure had grown taller as well. At first glance, where is the half-shadow of Jian Wushuang before? It is clearly a cosmic wave rover, who has walked the universe for many years. Fu Jun, you can't even recognize me in this dress. Lung Rushuang glanced at Jian Wushuang, covering his mouth and urging a narrow smile. Jian Wushuang heard a cold, frosty look and said, "This journey is extremely dangerous, so we must cover it up." Lung Rushuang heard a sneer and smirked. His right hand also waved, and his appearance suddenly changed. I saw a few fine lines on her original beautiful face. The purple fringed dress on her body was also transformed into a red dress, with a sharp chin and a strong Joan nose. The indignant air that can't eat the fireworks on the earth has a little more heroic female spirit. The two stood together, and it was like a couple marching together in the universe. The sword was unparalleled, and nodded with satisfaction. He waved his right hand, closed the spacecraft, twisted his neck, and walked towards the 5-planetary field as cold as frost. The largest city in the 5-planetary domain is named Wuxia, named after the 5 elements Shenzong, the strongest force in the 5-planetary domain. There are 4 major families under it, which are jointly responsible for the 5 elements. Jian Wushuang put the Wu weapon sword into the ring of Qiankuan. After the Tai Luo divine sword was covered with the supreme seal, the seal was more effective than the Shen divine seal. No breath was revealed at all. For the sake of insurance, Jian Wushuang was again in Tai. There is a layer of rust on the sword of Luo Xinjian. No one can see it at this moment. This iron sword with an ordinary and rusty texture will be the Taro sword that has set off a reign in the universe recently. Jian Wushuang wore a large black robe, hid the Tai Luo Excalibur under the black robe, and walked into the 5 elements city step by step as cold as frost. The guardian soldiers of the 5 elements city are 2 monks who have entered the first level to dominate the realm. When they saw Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang coming, they suddenly stopped with the halberds in their hands and asked expressionlessly, "2 people, newcomers to the 5 elements city, all need to register their identity information. May I ask how the 2 names are?" Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang heard the words, looked at each other, and then faintly replied, "The sword is not abandoned, and the 2nd series dominates. Ling Ruqing, the 1st level dominates. After the 2 have spoken, they will suppress the cultivation to the 2nd and 1st series, to dominate the realm, exhaling breath." After hearing the words, the 2 defending soldiers nodded, and after slightly sensing the breath of Jian Wushuang and the coldness, they registered the name and let it go. There were no twists and turns. Jian Wushuang is now re-entering the universe. Naturally, he can no longer use the original name. Even the blood sword and swordsman he used, naturally, he will no longer use it for the sake of insurance. As cold as frost, as his wife, in order to avoid people searching for swords and swords, he also used a pseudonym. In the 5 elements city, it is quite lively. After all, it is not too far away from the prosperous area of the universe. The streets in the city are crowded with people and bustle. Divine power is transformed into divine knowledge, spreading out overwhelmingly, covering the entire 5-planetary domain. Under his induction, the strongest in the 5 planetary domains are just a few top ultimate dominators. Most of them are as he showed. Most of the 1st to 5th dominated. Quietly withdrawing the divine power, Jian Wushuang lowered his head, pulled the wide black robe hood, covered most of his face, barely exposed his chin, and walked towards a restaurant. This time leaving the Temple of Life, Jian Wushuang didn't know where to go. He only knew that he had to see the millions of scenery in the world, to see the joys and sorrows of the world, and love and hatred avenue to Jane. Perhaps when he truly understood the universe, it was when he realized the avenue and broke through the supreme. Entering the restaurant, it was filled with high friends, filled with people from various star domains. They sat together and talked to each other about the recent events in the universe. Jian Wushuang's expression was dull, and he sat next to the window as cold as frost, asked for a pot of spirit wine, and gently simmered. "Did you hear? Dragon warships are almost at the Temple of Life." "What? It's only been a few days. How could the dragons be so fast?" "Well, how can the dragons spend their lives as ordinary people? I just don't know how to deal with the Temple of Life. As far as I guess, until now, the Palace of Life has been reluctant to surrender Sword Unparalleled, for fear it will be difficult. Just let me say, Jian Wushuang is an evil star, and the Temple of Life stands tens of thousands of chaos ages. As a result, Jian Wushuang is the only one who has made enemies on all sides and offended the dragons, causing such a disaster. That's right. What is the first genius of the universe? If the Supreme Masters who have the Temple of Life kept Swordsman's sword, it is estimated that he would have died too long. Ha ha ha, Your Excellency. Jian Wushuang is just relying on the Tai Luo Divine Sword. It is estimated that the real combat power is not as high as mine. If I have the Tai Luo Divine Sword, it will definitely be 10 million times stronger than Jian Wushuang. There was a sound of discussion, one after another. Everyone in the restaurant was discussing the birth of the dragons and the Sword Unparalleled. When almost everyone talked about Jian Wushuang, their tone was full of glee and joy. This is true of the human heart, only to see that others are worse than themselves, and that others are not better than themselves. I don't like sending charcoal in the snow. I love falling down the rocks alone. Chapter 43-32. Where could Lung Rushuang hear his husband? As others said, there was a flash of coldness in his eyes. When he wanted to say a few words, he saw Jian Wushuang stretch out his hand and pat it on the back of her hand. Anyway, Jian Wushuang lowered his glass and shook his head. Fu Jun, but they say you so. Lung Rushuang frowned. Before she finished speaking, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and said, there are tens of thousands of rumors in the world. What do you think of it? It is enough to be good. Well, take a break for a moment or two, and let's leave. Lung Rushuang heard the words and thought for a while, then spread his face and smiled and said, everything is right. A moment later, when Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang planned to leave, an evil young man wearing a genie and holding a folding fan and dressed as a rich man stepped into the restaurant. He first looked at the restaurant full of frowns, and his eyebrows frowned slightly, then his eyes turned, and he saw the cold frost sitting at the window with Jian Wushuang. A flash of light suddenly appeared in his eyes, and a smile appeared in the corner of his mouth. Towards the two people, the position is full here. Let's squeeze a place together, don't you mind? The evil young man opened the folding fan and shook it, smiling slightly. Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang heard the words. His brows could not help but wrinkle, and he said, you can sit here by yourself, we will go now. After that, Jian Wushuang and Frost were going to leave. The two left the Temple of Life to avoid the pursuit of the dragons, and they did not want to cause more trouble. Slow. Just then, the evil young man reached out and grabbed the frosty wrist, smiling. I think the two are born. They should have just come to the 5 planets domain, right? I want to come, and the two do not know the 5 planets domain. So I just sat down and talked together. After speaking, he seemed to have forgotten something, and patted his head. Yes, I almost forgot to introduce him. Master Xia is dominated by Shuanghe, the chief elder of the 5 Elements sect, and he is also my father. Having said that, the folding fan in his hand was opened, and the fan was fanned in front of his chest. However, he didn't notice that the coldness of frost had already become so cold when this man grabbed his wrist. She said coldly, open. As soon as the remarks came down, the temperature of the entire restaurant dropped by dozens of degrees suddenly like a chilly cold wind, and the evil young man stiffened, and then unconsciously let go of his hand. Lung Rushuang stepped back to Jian Wushuang. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's smile on his face had completely converged, and the killing in his eyes flashed away. This time, he intends to act low-key. But it does not mean that even his beloved wife can be indifferent to being bullied by others. The evil charm young man gradually recovered after a moment of distraction. As if I realized that the woman in front of me was just a fright, I lost my face, and immediately sneered at the table. 2. Don't toast without eating or drinking. Snapped. As soon as he clapped his hands, for a while, 7 or 8 fifth-ranking masters rushed in, first glancing at Jian Wushuang with a bad look, and then arched toward the evil young man. My son. The evil young man heard the words, closed the fan in his hand, squinted his eyes and said, "Surround them." Yes, wow. Suddenly, this group of fifth-ranking masters spread out, enclosing Jian Wushuang, and the cold as frost, blocking the back path of Jian Wushuang. Seeing this, the drinkers suddenly shrank their pupils, looking at Xiang Jianshuang and the cold frosty eyes, full of sympathy, shaking his head. Well, these two people provoked the largest second ancestor in these 5 planetary domains, but I'm afraid it will be difficult today. In these 5 planetary domains, the 5 Elements God sect is the only one, and this person is also the elder of the 5 Elements God sect. He has always been much favored. In these 5 elements, he has done a lot of ridiculous deeds. These 2 people provoked him. You're in big trouble. Yeah, it would be okay if the 2 were strong. The result is only one who dominates the first series and the second series. I'm afraid it is impossible to escape the clutches of the second ancestor. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. The sword had no expression on both sides. Looking at the evil young man said calmly, "I only give you one chance, let it go now." When the evil young man heard the words, he was not afraid, but there was a look of interest on his face, and he replied, "Give me only one chance. Then you listen. My son only gave you one chance. You are now out of the 5 planets area by yourself, leaving the couple around you. This son can still not blame, otherwise." Before he finished, Jian Wushuang had already pointed his finger towards his brows. "You have no chance." When the surrounding 5th-level masters saw the situation, they didn't care at all. In their view, the sword is unparalleled, but the 2nd-level masters dominated, and this evil young man has already had the 4th-level masters as the sword. Wushuang is just the 2nd-level master, purely insulting himself. However, the evil young man with a playful smile on his face was frozen solidly. At this moment, he seemed to see the image of the destruction of the world, and his eyes were astonished like ghosts. An indescribable terror struck him. This great horror, he had never felt in his father Shuanghe Lord, even the Lord of the 5 Elements God sect, far worse than that. He wanted to speak, but like a big invisible hand, choked his throat, his face flushed red, but he could not spit out a word. Next moment, Jian Wushuang's fingertips stopped at his eyebrow at a distance of 3 inches. However, a more terrifying and weird scene appeared, and there was no sound, but the evil young man was from head to toe, silent, and directly turned into the most empty nothingness. After only half a break, the evil young man was destroyed. Suddenly, the entire restaurant opened his mouth wide, his eyes dumbfounded, and turned into a dead silence. The masters of the 5th rank stared at Jian Wushuang in astonishment, speechless. It wasn't until a long time ago that he saw a 5th-level master, and he reached out his hand and tremblingly pointed at the sword Wushuang. And he did not dare to make a channel. You actually killed the only son of Elder Shuanghe? You're dead." And the 2 people gathered by countless horror eyes, whether it was Jian Wushuang or cold as frost, looked as usual. They couldn't bear a wave in their hearts, as if they had just done a trivial matter. A message was conveyed to the 5 Elements Shenzong in the center of the 5 Elements city at an extremely rapid rate. And at the same time, deep in the universe, outside the Palace of Life, 1, 2, 3, 9 dragon warships sailed slowly towards the Temple of Life. In the end, the 9 dragon-shaped warships exuding terrifying coercion quietly hovered in front of the gate of the Temple of Life. The majesty swept across the starry sky, slamming the quartet like a stormy sea, smashing nearly 10,000 miles around, crushing them all, and setting off numerous space storms. Here comes the dragon. Chapter 43-33. When the dragon army came outside the Palace of Life, the entire universe was boiling, and they did not want to miss this shocking battle, and rushed to the battle of the appearance of the Palace of Life. Everyone looked at the 9-bone dragon battleships that struck the starry sky from afar. They were all trembled in their hearts, shocked by the coercion of the dragons that day. Especially on the bone dragon battleship, the black muzzle formed by the dragon's mouth was even more chilling. This is the dragon race. The dragons are really great. Just these 9 space battleships, each with a supreme blow. The rank of the rank has reached the limit of the universe law. And because this is the reason for the space battleship, in terms of value, we must far beyond the limits of other cosmic laws. It is impossible to estimate. You say, how many generations will the dragons come over this time? This is hard to say, but based on my guess, I want to face the Temple of Life. How can I get the 4th generation of dragons? The Temple of Life, countless monks who came from all directions began to discuss. They know that if there is a problem with the Shrine of Life today, they will be destroyed by fear. 9 dragon warships were quietly suspended outside the Temple of Life, and did not rush to shoot, as if they were giving the Temple of Life the last chance. The Temple of Life, inside the Supreme Temple. The hall full of Supreme, all stand upright. Extreme Gav, the dragons are here. Bloodwave Supreme stood on the side of Gaffa Supreme, and said softly. Gav Supreme sat in the first position, eyes closed slightly, and the fingers of his right hand gently rubbed the seat armrests. Hearing that, he slowly opened his eyes, and his old and dim eyes were gray, and he could not see the slightest emotion. Let's go and meet the dragons. The words fell, and Gaver stood up and walked towards the Temple of Life. The other 4 Supreme Masters, as well as other Supreme Masters, such as King of the 9th Calamity, followed without a word. Today's incident, there is no bottom in everyone's heart. Even they are ready to die. Alas, with a soft ring, dozens of figures, including Supreme Gap, appeared in the void outside the Palace of Life. Immediately, there was a commotion in the crowd. Here comes the person from the Temple of Life. The show is about to begin. Look at it, there is no sword without a match. The discussion sounded loudly, and Gawaf didn't manage it. Even the master of the Diwu Shrine on the deck in Longjiu, the law enforcer of Dragon Clan, did not manage it, but looked straight towards the middle dragon warship. Looking around, he said slightly, "Guests come to the door, I'll wait for a miss." In the middle of the dragon warship, there was a moment of silence. Immediately, I heard a deep hoarse sound, like a sound of iron and stone, sounded from the space warship in the middle. "Gav, how about a sword without 2? The voice fell, clearly not using any power, but it sounded in everyone's heart at the same time. Hearing this voice, the 4 chief executives behind Gaffa Supreme had their pupils shrunk. This voice is familiar to anyone who has experienced the battle of that catastrophe. Unexpectedly, this time the dragon family even sent him out. Thinking of this, the presence of the Supreme was sinking in my heart. Gav supremely replied, "Dragon, it is not my Palace of Life that is unwilling to surrender Jian Wushuang. But Jian Wushuang escaped from the Palace of Life that day when we were not aware of it. We, the Temple of Life, are also looking for sword unparalleled." Escape. The voice that had spoken before had not spoken. I saw the dragon ruler Longjiu. His eyes narrowed and said sneerly, "If you have so many divine beings in your life, you won't be able to see a sword unparalleled? Let him run away. You can just lie to the kids if you use this kind of crap. To lie to us dragons? Gav, I tell you, if your Shrine of Life can't deliver the sword unparalleled today, then be prepared for the whole life shrine to be buried for the sword unparalleled." After speaking, he stood up against his hands, his chest was upright, and he was endlessly overbearing and proud. Although he has only ordinary supreme practice, he is not afraid of facing Gap. "Little guy, are you threatening the old man?" Gav's supremely cloudy eyes flashed a faint light, indifferent to his mouth. The law enforcer Longjiu heard that, and his face was even more sneer, but he was not afraid to ask back, "What about threatening you? Huh?" After waiting for him to speak, Gaffa Supreme sighed, and reached out to the Dragon 9 and kept pointing. "If your ancestors came to say this to the husband, but a 5th-generation bloodline dragon tribe of yours, would you dare to threaten the husband?" Suddenly countless methods emerged. A giant finger broke through the sky. This giant finger reached thousands of feet, and instantly covered the entire starry sky. A 1,000,000-mile planet was in front of this finger. Small as dust. It is impossible to use any words to describe the horror of this finger. It is a majestic force beyond everyone's imagination. "How dare you? When the law enforcement officer Long Jiu saw this, he immediately fell into an ice cellar and was shocked. Under this finger, he actually felt that he was no longer a dragon clan that overlooked the universe, but an ant who could be crushed to death at any time. Looking up at the starry sky, he didn't expect that this governance would dare to shoot at him after their dragon army came down. www.novel.com. Just then the hoarse old voice from the space battleship in the middle, before that continued to spread. Enough. Next moment. Then he saw a dragon arm covered with black dragon scales and born with 7 claws. He protruded from the dragon warship and grabbed him with a finger towards GV. The arms of the 7-clawed dragon are covered with scars, full of sword and axe sword marks, and the bones are deeply visible, making it impossible to imagine how much the master of this 7-clawed dragon arm has encountered. This grab was equally horrible. It shattered all the void around it, and where it scratched, countless black hole vortexes were formed. Each vortex formed on this grab. Each vortex turned out to be a universe. Storm. Suddenly, this finger and this claw robbed all the brilliance of the world, whether it is the 9 dragon fighting warships, or the blood wave supreme behind the supreme, etc., all appear to be dim. In the eyes of everyone, everything disappeared, leaving only this finger and this claw. Gaifu, you and I were allied, but the rules were the rules. Sword Wuxia killed my dragon clan, so he had to pay him back. One life is one life, and what my dragons do is not excessive. He had been throbbing, and could not help being suppressed by Jian Wuxia. Don't abandon the sword, this is my lover Ling Ruqing. Don't give up the master. This lord takes the liberty to ask, what is the reason for you to kill the elder of this sect? The 5 elements god said. Jian Wuxia heard the words, and replied lightly, this person's words offend me first, then I will kill. Is it okay? When the 5 elements god heard the words, he narrowed his eyes, and said deeply, don't abandon the Lord, just offend the words, and kill the elder in my case, and then just walk away. Isn't it appropriate? Jian Wuxia heard the words, tilted his head, and smiled and said to him, so are you doing justice for him? When the 5 elements god heard the words, his pupils suddenly shrank. He stared tightly at Jian Wuxia, his thoughts flashing in his heart. He is not a stupid person. Since the sword in front of him can kill the elders with one palm, this is enough proof that the strength of the sword is not higher than himself, but he is definitely not under him. After weighing the pros and cons, the 5 elements god said, do NT give up the master? How do you like this? We bet on the 3 moves, as long as you take over the 3 moves of the Lord. My 5 elements god sect respectfully send you away. The elder stop it and never mention it again. If you see ANT take it. The eyes of the 5 elements god looked cold. I'm so sorry you and your acquaintances. I'm afraid you have to stay in my 5 elements god sect's prison. Oh. Jian Wuxia heard the words. A look of interest floated on his face and said, gambling is fine, but I want to raise. Raise? What do you mean? The 5 elements king looked puzzled. Jian Wuxia extended his finger and pointed at the 5 elements sect standing in the center of the 5 elements city. www.novel said, if Jian loses, let this fate be yours, but if you lose God, I need to take something like your 5 elements sect. This. The 5 elements god hesitated for a while, then focused and said, yes. Jian Wuxia smiled and heard. Good. He could feel that the chaotic inborn OG spirit that he just felt in the 5 elements city came from the 5 elements Shinzong. Although he did not know why the broken bronze ancient tripod suddenly had movement after encountering this chaotic inborn OG spirit, he was absolutely certain that perhaps the way to really open this bronze ancient tripod was innate with this chaos otoki no ki. Let's start. Converge, Jian Wuxia said lightly. The words fell, and the disciples of the 5 elements surrounding God retreated, leaving a large area of space. Cover up. Let this person pay his life for the elder. One move. The Lord can defeat this man with just one move. Disciples of the 5 elements Shinzong cheered. Fu Jun, be careful. Cold as frost said, slightly concerned. It's all right. Chapter 43-36. Next moment. The 5 elements god shouted loudly and pushed his right hand forward fiercely. Instantly this 5-colored light ball, carrying a mighty might, smashed towards the sword unparalleled. In these 5 colored of light, the 5 elements of Jin Mu, Shuehua 2, one by one, are endless, constantly changing, and very powerful. Is that so? Jian Wushuang's brow lifted, and an interesting expression appeared in the corner of his mouth. The power in this ball of light was quite good, bringing together the power of the 5 elements, and even for him, he couldn't help looking at him. The idea of this technique is good, but unfortunately, your understanding of the 5 elements is still too low. Shaking his head, Sword Wushuang grabbed it with his hands. The sword twirled between his 5 fingers, like a snake, walking between his 5 fingers. Immediately, Jian Wushuang's right-hand sword exploded, crushing the 5-colored light ball directly. In the face of absolute strength, everything is fancy and unbeatable. Suddenly, many disciples of the 5 Elements sect, who were clamoring for cheering, were dumbfounded and their mouths widened. The 5 elements of the gods. The pupils shrank instantly, and there was a strong sense of fear in their faces. This shot, although he just wanted to use it as a temptation, didn't even want to defeat Jian Wushuang at all. But Jian Wushuang's response is too easy. 2 more tricks. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. After hearing the words, the 5 elements god took a deep breath, and his expression gradually became serious. He drank. Okay. The sword is not abandoned. The second trick is the master's skills. You are optimistic. Mystery everlasting. Bang! The voice fell, and in a moment, the 5 elements king quickly twitched his hands. Behind him, a huge round of French-language pictures suddenly appeared. In this French-language picture, a towering giant tree is rooted in the soil, and a dew rain drops from the sky. Under the nourishment of the rain, the towering giant tree formed of gold and iron suddenly grows and grows. Raised just a few breaths away, it will bear fruit full of flame fruits. Golden wood, water, fire, and soil are the 5 elements. This towering giant tree, with Otoki's gas as its foundation, and gold, earth, water, and fire as its side branches, together supported this round of 5 elements. Okay. Looking at this round of FA phase, even Jian Wushuang couldn't help but whispered and moved slightly. He actually saw the shadow of the kingdom of God in the equivalent of the 5 elements. Although the 5 elements are far worse than the true state of God, even a frame has not yet been formed, but it is undeniable. This is indeed a precursor to the formation of a mind. The thought of the kingdom of God, but some of the ultimate killings that the Supreme has not yet realized. If these 5 elements of the gods break through to the Supreme Realm, or their understanding of the 5 elements of the avenue is leaps and bounds, and even break through several barriers, perhaps these 5 elements can be truly transformed into a mind of God. Good. Jian Wushuang spoke with admiration. Go with. The expression of the 5 elements god king was stern and pushed forward fiercely. Instantly, this towering giant tree danced like a silver snake, and the 5-colored gods of light poured out. Like the rainstorm pear-flower needle, thousands of 5-colored shengguang pull out countless white marks in the air. Haha, Lord Sovereign has used the magic power at the bottom of the box. This blow is absolutely impossible for this person. Yes, the 5 elements of the Sovereign Lord. The 5 elements are interlinked, endless and endless, unless the power is far superior to the Lord Sovereign. Otherwise all attack power will be consumed. At first some disciples of the 5 elements divine sect who had been hit hard immediately revived their spirits and looked at the king of the 5 elements with full of worship. If I didn't break through the ultimate dominator, I might not be able to hold these 5-colored gods for a while, but Jian Wushuang smiled silently in his heart, then raised his right fingers together, turned into a sword finger, and then hacked away toward these hundreds of 5-colored light. Now I, in the realm of domination, is invincible. Ha! A bang came. The sword Wushuang finger was cut, and no sword air was used at all. and the majestic power of the majesty was directly used to turn into a white expanse. Broken. This is not over yet. Jian Wushuang's fingertips gently pushed forward, and at that moment, the majestic and mighty power of the match was as good as the tide of the sea, one after the other, floating again behind the 5 elements king. The 5 elements are up. Tuk-tuk. After 3 consecutive muffled noises, the FA phase behind the 5 elements god, after only holding for a breath, fell apart instantly and broke apart. The towering giant tree, swaying in shape, is broken innumerably. How can it be? The 5 elements god was shocked, exclaiming incredulously. As the disciples of the 5 elements Shinzong said, this style of peerlessness, the 5 elements are connected to each other. Unless the strength is far beyond him, it will never be possible, so easily break such peerlessness. But the man in front of him, but with one finger, not only crushed his 5 colors of light, but also mainly anti-customers and directly defeated him. Such overbearing means, even if invincible, will not be so easy to do? The audience turned into a dead silence. Everyone stared at Jian Wushuang dumbfounded, their eyes dropped in shock. Jian Wushuang looked at him with a complacent expression, and smiled slightly. God, start the 3rd move. However, when the 5 elements god heard the words, he no longer had any action but sighed. There is no need to compare. The suzerain concedes that this suzerain is inferior to others. Say, the sword isn't abandoned. What do you want from my 5 elements sect? Jian Wushuang groaned slightly, feeling the throbbing movement of the bronze ancient tripod inside the ring of Qingquan, and said, it's true. I don't know what I want, but I can be sure that what I want is here. You are within the 5 elements sect. When the 5 elements god heard the words, he could not help but hesitated, and immediately smiled bitterly. By the way, please go to the house with me and choose by yourself. Thank you so much for God. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, arching hands. Let's go. The 5 elements king with sword Wushuang walked towards the 5 elements god sect. On the one hand, the disciples of the 5 elements Shinzong quickly gave way, looking at Jian Wushuang's eyes, full of curiosity and awe. Regardless of age, or a sword that seems to be about the same size as its own, how can it be so powerful? The sword Wushuang is behind the 5 elements god king. The closer to the 5 elements god sect, the more you can feel that the bronze ancient tripod in Qingquan ring is getting more excited. It is just like a child who wants to eat candy, and is extremely excited. As if there is something with absolute temptation, waiting for this bronze ancient tripod. If the sword Wushuang directly infused a large amount of divine power, and repressed the bronze ancient tripod reluctantly, I am afraid that this bronze ancient tripod has already rushed out of the ring of Qingquan, and flew towards somewhere of the 5 elements Shinzong. It seems that this bronze ancient tripod has a lot to do with the innate chaos of Otoki. The sword had no expression on both sides, and the thoughts in his heart kept flashing. After a while, the 5 elements sect is here. Chapter 43-37. The city of 5 elements extends in all directions, and the trees form a forest. Among them, in the center of the 5 elements city, there is a huge mountain gate. At the foot of the mountain gate, the word 5 elements is engraved. Here is the Taoism of the 5 elements sect. Don't give up the sword, go in. The 5 elements king said helplessly. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then took the cold as frost, and walked into the 5 elements sect. In the 5 elements sect, there is a lush and quiet environment inside. Numerous students have a wise tree swinging with the wind, and making a sound of. The sword is unpretentious, and it is not anxious to watch while walking. Don't give up the sword, there is treasure pavilion in front. The 5 elements god said. Okay, take me there. Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words, and Shen answered. He could feel that the thing he wanted, or the bronze ancient tripod in his Qingquan ring, was in the treasure hall of the 5 elements god sect. From a distance, the time when this treasure hall was built should be a long time. The stone bricks made by Lingyu have become a little yellowish, and the 5 elements god led the 2 men, Jian Wushuang and Frost, to the door of the treasure hall. I saw a layer of light green mask, covering the treasure hall. as the five elements god reached out the palm of the hand and pressed on the mask. And for a while, this light green mask waved a wave, and then dissolved enough passage for two people to pass. Come in. The five elements lord reached out, and made a pleased gesture. Into the treasure hall. A cloud of turbid air mixed with dust rushed to the nose. It should be because no one has come in for a long time. Inside the treasure pavilion, there are 2 levels in it. I saw the five elements king introduce. Swords will not be abandoned, so you can choose one here. Sword Wuxia nodded, and looked at the treasure hall at will. I have to say that the five elements god sect is in the universe, although it is a little-known sect, but there are not many treasures in the collection. Wuxia saw no less than 3. If the sword is not abandoned, what do you think of this jade ruby? Although it is only a treasure of Chinese goods, it is fickle, and can be turned into any weapon. There is also this shuttle, which can increase the flight speed by 10%. If you leave the 5-planet domain in the future, this shuttle will be useful to you when the universe is roaming. The five elements god Jun one by one introduced the sword to Wuxia. When talking about some really powerful treasures, even in his eyes, he couldn't help flashing the pain of the road. However, Jian Wuxia looked like hesitated, his expression was indifferent, and his fingers kept passing across the treasure. No, still not. Jian Wuxia narrowed his eyes, and his fingers crossed all the treasures on the first floor. The bronze ancient tripod in his Qianquan ring did not show a different response. Not on the first floor. Sir, I want to see it on the second floor. Converged, Jian Wuxia said to him. Second floor? The five-element monk was stunned, but the treasures in the second layer were all left by the ancestors of the five-element sect, even if he had no choice but to move. Yes. Jian Wuxia nodded. After hearing the words, the five elements god could not help but hang a bitter smile on his face, and hesitated in his heart. He even sighed. Well, let alone, I will take you to the second floor. The words fell, and the five elements king, with swordsman and cold as frost, walked to a tightly closed iron gate, carefully took out a token, and inserted it into a gap. Click and wipe. Suddenly, the treasure hall vibrated, and a sound like gear friction and a mechanism change was issued. Immediately, I saw this tightly fitting iron gate, and quickly disintegrated, exposing a long spiral stone ladder. The Lord of the Five Elements, while walking up with his sword unparalleled, said, The sword is not abandoned. The treasures in the second layer are all left by the old ancestor of the Five Elements god sect. The contents are more cluttered, and many treasures are even I do and recognize it. You can't tell whether it's good or bad. You have to rely on yourself. Okay, thank you. Jian Wuxia nodded and walked in step by step. I saw only a dim yellow oil lamp hanging on the second floor, and looked at the old color of the entire second floor. Sword Wuxia stared at it carefully. The personal belongings of the five-element prince's ancestor, such as robes and clouds, have even become most decayed, and decayed by the long years of erosion. The five elements king no longer spoke, leaving Jian Wuxia to choose by himself. Is this, or this? Jian Wuxia's right hand, constantly passing across items. Here are the best rules of treasure. There are mysterious little things that he cannot see the calendar, but these are not the goals of Jian Wuxia. The second layer was not large. Jian Wuxia searched quickly, and a look of disappointment gradually appeared in his eyes. He didn't find the one that made the bronze ancient tripod throbbing. The bronze ancient tripod also became quiet. Fu Jun, didn't you find it? Lung Ruxuang stood next to Jian Wuxia. She accompanied Jian Wuxia to the north and south. After thousands of calamities, naturally she knew Jian Wuxia best. She couldn't guess where. Jian Wuxia was looking for something. No. Jian Wuxia shook his head, and then planned to leave to the five elements gods, although there are many treasures in the treasure hall. If you change people, you may still be ecstatic, but his sword is unparalleled, and he has the Terra ruins. Inheritance ransacked the ancient road to the sky, and now the most important thing is the treasures, where you can see these things. However, at this moment, Jian Wuxia frowned suddenly, and saw a half-inch long dead wood exposed from the bottom of the box. What is this? Swordless fingers pointed at this half of the dead wood, and the words of farewell had turned into an inquiry. This one. The five-element prince froze and thought for a while and said, "The ancestor said before the fall. This thing seemed to be handed over to him by a deceased person for his help. But the prince did not know what it was. But it looks like it should be just a ordinary mortals." Wuxia nodded his head, reached out his hand arbitrarily, and grabbed this half of dead wood. Ha! Suddenly, Jian Wuxia trembled, and the bronze ancient tripod located in his ring of heaven shook violently and fiercely, like a child who eats food, and can't wait to urge Jian Wuxia to take this thing. "This is it." Jian Wu's eyes flashed wildly, but his face was calm, and lifted the dead wood. "God, I want this thing." Chapter 43-38. After getting the dead wood, Jian Wuxia didn't stay in the Five Elements God sect. After a few words of confusion with the Five Elements God, he left the Five Elements God realm, as cold as frost. In the vast sky, a cosmic boat is galloping forward. In the spacecraft, Lung Rushuang has returned to the town of Tianbei to practice, and strive to break through the ultimate, as soon as possible to help Jian Wuxia. A lone sword unparalleled, sitting cross-legged in the cosmic boat, holding the piece of dark dead wood from the Five Elements Shinzong in his hands, his eyes kept flashing thinking. After his tests and explorations, this piece of dead wood is indeed just an ordinary mortal thing, without any magical power. But when he poured a lot of divine power into it, and scanned it inch by inch, he suddenly found some abnormalities. In this dead wood, there is a chaotic congenital Otsuki breath of finger thickness. It is this chaotic inborn Oji spirit that triggered the throbbing of the bronze ancient tripod. The sword's eyes flickered, and instead of rushing to take out the bronze ancient tripod, he poured out countless divine powers, forming a protective cover centered on him, and immediately turning over with his right hand, let Wu Weeping Sword swim around. Avoid any emergencies. After doing all this, the sword has no reassurance on both sides. Today, he is still extremely hopeless to break through, and realizes the mood of the Tao, and only touches the fur. If he wants to improve his strength in a short time, he can only increase the magic power, yes. Or, it depends on the magic weapon. For some reason, Jian Wuxuang's heart vaguely predicts that perhaps his opportunity for enhancement lies on this bronze ancient tripod. After some thoughts, Jian Wuxuang converged his thoughts, flipped his right hand again, and suddenly, the bronze ancient tripod appeared in his hands. The sight of this bronze ancient tripod suddenly appeared, and the vision suddenly occurred. At this moment, the bronze ancient tripod seemed to have a sense of wisdom, like a jubilant child, shaking violently, and the black deadwood, like a sense of induction, quickly collapsed and disintegrated. Suddenly, the sawdust flew, and a cyan light of the thickness of the thumb radiated towards the bronze ancient tripod. Congenital Otsuki. Jian Wuxuang's pupils suddenly shrank, looking tightly at the bronze ancient tripod. Suddenly, the original ancient simplicity, no matter how the sword Wuxuang tried hard, and did not react at all, the bronze ancient tripod smashed into a masterpiece. A green light flickered across the surface of the bronze ancient tripod. Even if I saw it, the mysterious rune carved on the bronze ancient tripod was alive, constantly twisting and splitting, and then formed a small sapling shape. The sound of the yellow bell, which rang from the chaos of ancient times, swayed through the Xianhuang Honghuang like a violent blast, spreading everywhere. This voice is extremely ancient. Under this voice, even Jian Wuxuang feels as small as the dust. Fortunately, Jian Wuxuang had already used his divine power to form a closed and isolated space within 10 feet of his circle, before letting this voice not spread. Call out. Immediately afterwards, I saw this bronze ancient tripod bounced up and turned into a blue light. Swallow what I gave and still want to escape? Jian Wuxuang's eyes narrowed. There was a cold flash in his eyes, and his 5 fingers scratched toward the bronze ancient tripod. Suddenly, the Weeping Wu sword, who was walking around, was beheaded towards the bronze ancient tripod. A dull sound came out, and I saw the Wu cry Excalibur, which contained the power of the universe's extreme treasure, and was struck by this bronze ancient tripod, and then was whizzed and wailed. Okay. Jian Wushuang suddenly smiled angrily, slamming his right hand, and disappeared instantly. In a flash again, Jian Wushuang appeared in front of the bronze ancient tripod, and the 5 knuckle fingers extended, grasping the bronze ancient tripod severely. Buzzing. The sound of yellow bells rang loudly, and Jian Wushuang's body trembled. He grasped this bronze ancient tripod, and it felt like there were millions of ancient wild cows colliding with him. Overturned. This bronze ancient tripod is still an ownerless thing, and it is still incomplete. But after absorbing the breath of Otoki, it will fly Wu weapon sword, and almost overturn him. How terrible is this? Dragon blood secrets. Regardless of the horror, Jian Wushuang gave a low sigh, and the divine power suddenly burned and turned into 10 times strength. The two continued to wrestle, until after a few breaths, Jian Wushuang was worthy to stabilize the bronze ancient tripod. Breathing a deep breath, the sword held the bronze ancient tripod with both hands, and sat down with its knees crossed, and the divine power explored towards the bronze ancient tripod. This time, Jian Wushuang suddenly found a difference. I can see that there is a boundless chaotic space in the bronze ancient tripod. This chaotic space is so large that it is indescribable. After a while, Jian Wushuang retracted his divine power and frowned. The bronze ancient tripod did change, but how to use it is still unknown. After a moment, Jian Wushuang shook his head. It seems that if you want to really use the power of this bronze ancient tripod, you have to absorb more innate chaos Otoki. I just don't know whether this bronze ancient tripod is only interested in Ojish Qi, or as long as it is the innate chaos of the 5 elements. After some self-speaking, Jian Wushuang uttered a smile, and his face raised a smile. However, although I still have no idea how to use this bronze ancient tripod, but just relying on the gravity of this ancient tripod, brutally throwing it out is enough to crush any master below the supreme, even the face regarding the supreme, and then motivated by my divine power, throwing this bronze ancient tripod out can also cause great respect. Now the top priority is to find a way to refine this bronze ancient tripod, and let this ancient tripod confess the Lord. Otherwise, if you have just thrown this bronze ancient tripod during the battle, you have to wait before hitting someone. Isn't it a joke anymore? Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang smiled a little, and suddenly poured out countless divine power, wrapped this bronze ancient tripod, refining 1 inch by 1 inch. And when Jian Wushuang left the 5 planetary domain, in the Temple of Life, a shocking battle has already erupted. This battle attracted the eyes of the entire universe. Howl! A long moon, stars like the sun and the moon, like a 7-clawed dragon out of the chaos, soar into the sky and scream. The terrifying sound waves shook for 9 days and 10, and when I heard the sound of the dragon, the crowds watching the battle all bowed their heads. Their hearts were trembling. This 7-clawed dragon is covered with black scales, with a touch of gold in the eyes, 2 white beards swaying slightly around the mouth. An endless pressure is taken from him. The blood of the 3rd generation of the dragon family, the contemporary patriarch of the evil dragon family, the dragons. Chapter 43-39. At this moment outside the Palace of Life, 9 dragon warships traverse the starry sky, exuding a cold luster. On each of the 9 dragon warships, there are dragon people. All of them are the blood of the 5th generation of dragons. The dragon race has developed from the Chaos era to the present. It has been counted from the first ancestor dragon, but it has only developed to the 6th generation dragon race. In addition to the 6th generation dragon race that is still growing, the 5th generation dragon race goes up, and is the supreme dragon. A total of 9 dragon warships, 9 supreme realms, stood on the deck. They were born with dragon heads, standing with their hands on their backs, and 2 dragon beards floating near their lips. Their eyes were pale gold, majestic and sacred, and they could not be violated. Coupled with the upstream dragging in the nebula, the coercion shocked the 3 generations of the Dragon Clan Dragon 9 for 9 days and 10 places. This time, the Dragon Clan conquered the Temple of Life, and they sent out 10 Supreme. This is not the end. In the dark of the universe, many Supreme Masters of Diwu Temple are quietly dormant. As long as the Master of Diwu Temple orders, they will kill them and give the Life Shrine a severe blow. Gaifu, do you really want to push the Temple of Life to an endless place for a sword unparalleled? Long Yan's dark golden eyes glanced at Gaofu. She said in a deep voice. He and Gaifu could be regarded as old friends. In the cataclysm that swept across the universe, the two men fought side by side. Therefore, he also knows Gav's injuries best. If Gav now takes a forcible shot and explodes for a while, he will explode and die. Gav's supreme expression indifferent, did not speak. Two long black handles appeared in his hands. My monk, why not fight? Boom! Suddenly, there was a terrifying terror that swept the world, centered on the supreme gap, and burst out. This horrible coercion is like a substance, forming a shock wave, sweeping the sky and the ground. 8 wastelands and 6 combinations, full of the solemn esteem. Under this coercion, even the 3 generations of the blood of the dragon tribe have been crushed. Supreme Gap, the true pillar of the Palace of Life, is also the strongest person ever recognized. Apart from the Lord of the Palace of Life, for the first time, Gav Extreme has fully demonstrated his strength. I am covered, my Temple of Life. Have I ever feared half of this world? The turbidity in Gav Supreme's eyes completely disappeared, just like the bright jade stripped of dust, showing his glory. Behind Gav Supreme, the 4 Chief Supremes, such as Bloodwave and Giant Axe, as well as many Supremes, have also emerged with great power, dominating the quartet, and preparing for the decisive battle. Also, Gav, don't blame me for being ruthless. Cold light appeared in Long Nin's eyes, and under the arrogant howl of his mouth, he immediately grabbed toward Gafa Supreme. The remaining 9 5th-generation dragons are also directly transformed into the dragons themselves, with prestige in their mouths, rushing towards the Supremes of the Temple of Life. From the beginning, the war situation was stuck. Kill! Every one of the supreme magical powers released all kinds of glory. The White Tiger Supreme picked up a dragon family and flew fiercely. The great axe turned into a grate of chaos. The axe in his hand opened up the world and severely chopped a golden dragon. At the corner, a long string of sparks was drawn. The Blood Wave Supreme is even more horrible. With a tear of his hands, a sea of blood is directly raised, and several dragons are drowned. However, the most dazzling performance is still the new king of the 9 kings. Smallbug. He had white hair flying, his expression was as cold as ice, and he raised millions of tons of force directly, grabbing the dragon law enforcer Long Jiao. And he was bombarded violently to the extreme. The newly promoted Supreme, he showed no less than the top Supreme. At this moment, the entire universe seemed to be smashed, and countless voids were smashed, setting off a storm. Let's do it too. The master of Diwu Shrine narrowed his eyes and waved his right hand forward slightly. In a short time, dozens of black shadows emerged from the void, and his face was full of coldness. They have been waiting for a long time. The next moment, the shadow flickered and turned into a streamer, rushing towards the supreme masters of the Temple of Life. The ordinary Supreme of the Life Shrine failed to respond, and was directly used by a Supreme of the Diwu Temple to destroy his heart with a destroying spear. Before he could send a miserable message, he was swallowed by the flying dragons. After the battle, with the entrance of the Supreme Court of Diwu Shrine, it suddenly began to fall. The master of Diwu Shrine looked sneer, raised his head and looked toward the endless void, where the 3rd generation of dragons of the dragon race, Dragon Soul, was fighting against Gafa Supreme. As the 3rd generation blood of the Dragon Clan, and who had participated in the Battle of the Holocaust, at this moment, it was actually suppressed by the Supreme Lord of Gap, and the main hall of the Diwu Shrine saw this. Gave Supreme kill. Today the Temple of Life will die. As long as the Supreme is resolved, the rest will not be able to achieve a climate. And at the same time, at the headquarters of Judy Pavilion, which is not far from the Temple of Life, the cosmic passage leading to the Temple of Life slowly opened, revealing 3 figures. Standing in the middle of is a purple-haired, purple-eyed, expressionless, seductive teenager. On his left and right sides, the old man with a chilly heart and a red-faced old man with a stern expression stood on his hands. Let's wait for a long time. The next moment, the cosmic passage closed slowly, and the shadow of the three disappeared at the cosmic passage. The three of them will represent the 9 Emperor Pavilion and help the Temple of Life. This is just the beginning. Far away from the universe, a sword mountain suspended in the starry sky. On this day, several swords rose into the sky and headed towards the Imperial Sword of Life Shrine. Standing at the head is an icy woman, wearing a red diamond with a diamond mark on her brows. She is Wu Jianxian, and also the Invincible Supreme, the first female sword god. Behind her, the 7 elders stepped on the flying sword, followed closely by pulling long white marks in the air, making a sonic boom. On this day, the sword air is 80,000 miles long, and the sword is light and cold. In the universe, countless people looked up and were convinced by these peerless sword fairy styles. Wu Jianxian's expression was indifferent. This time to go to the Temple of Life, not for the enemy, but for support. Jian Wushuang, since you have all the inheritance of Tai Luo, count as half of his disciples. So shouldn't you call this master a maid? Just when the entire universe was boiling, Jian Wushuang was already driving the cosmic boat, left the 5 planetary domain, completely away from the prosperous area of the universe, and entered the wild place of the universe. In the cosmic boat, the sword sat cross-legged, and in front of him, a map of the universe hovered. The stars on the map of the universe have countless lights, and each light represents a star field. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.